Chapter 96. As expected, refining pills can train one's control of spiritual energy. The changes in the medicinal properties, the changes in the talismans, it helps one to comprehend the path of heaven and earth. No wonder those alchemists aren't much slower than normal spirit masters. In the past, when Zhong Shou refined pills in the God Emperor game, he chose the idiot control method. Simply put, he didn't care and tossed it all to the system. Then, there was a certain success and failure rate. Whether or not the pill was formed depended on luck. Most players were like that. Some people, on the other hand, chose to control the fire themselves. All of them were really talented alchemists in the modern world. Just like how he used the virtual world to train his sword techniques and talisman techniques. These people also used the game to increase their pill refining experience. At this moment, when he personally refined pills, the feeling was different. Zhong Shou was worried about the huge increase in his soul power. His soul ocean, which had expanded by tens of times, was about to lose control. At this moment, he decided to treat pill refining as his own cultivation. After sitting there for half a day, Zhong Shou estimated that the time was enough. The firepower of the silver charcoal had started to weaken. He couldn't wait to open the lid of the cauldron, only to see that it was a sticky ball. Deep within the furnace was a ball of soft paste. There were only a few pill-shaped objects that were soft. Not enough firepower? Zhong Shou curiously picked up those few pills. There was a bit of medicinal fragrance. However, it was sticky and sticky. Looking at it, no matter what, he didn't dare to put it into his mouth. Forget it. It's my first time refining pills. It's already giving me face that I didn't burn it. In 2 days, I'll coax Shui to try one. He shook his head. This thing was different from the luck word talisman. As for whether it was a spiritual pill or a poison pill, he wasn't sure. Moreover, his heart ached for this brat, and he didn't want her to suffer. Shui can't do it. Unfortunately, there won't be a chance. If not, I can let Li Yinyang try. Why not find cats and dogs to test the medicine? Keeping the few pills, Zhong Shou didn't want to waste the medicinal paste. After rubbing it into pills, he wrapped it up, following which, he started to refine pills once more. He had only bought about 60 kilograms of silver charcoal. Zhong Shou ignored his exhaustion and opened the cauldron 5 times in a row, using almost half of the cauldron's power. After spending an entire day and night, the pills in the cauldron finally took shape. It resembled a dragon's eye, and it was pure black in color. Regardless of whether it was its smell, size, shape, or luster, it was identical to what was recorded in the book. Zhong Shou suppressed his joy and rushed out of the room. He looked around. This courtyard was quiet and elegant, but there weren't any beasts or birds that he could test his pills on. Suddenly, his heart skipped a beat, and he walked to the side of the pond. He took out a pill, crushed it, and threw it into the pond. Just as he was wondering in his heart, could it be that he also had such talent in refining pills? In just 4 tries, the pill had been formed. This level of skill was already comparable to those legendary genius alchemists. It was unknown whether the powder was affected by the smell or not. The goldfish in the pond were competing with each other, following which, under his expectant gaze, those fish weakly flipped to the surface of the water. Samurai's eyes lit up. This monster pill, known as the Meridian Spirit Pill, had such an effect, softening the meridians of the entire body. It was a special pill used in the future to correct the chakra meridians. It had few uses, but it was worth a city. In the next moment, he saw those goldfish flipping their bellies. They struggled with all their might, and then they stopped breathing. Zhong Shou was speechless, standing on the spot like a bucket of cold water had been poured over him. The joy from before had disappeared without a trace. A cold wind blew over, causing his body to feel cold. Looking at the huge sun in the sky, he felt his entire body turn cold. This Meridian Spirit Pill is indeed a little difficult. Refining pills isn't easy. The ancients didn't lie to me. Just as he sighed, Chu Shui exclaimed, "Young master, did you go to dig coal? How did you become like this?" Zhong Shou was slightly startled, looking at the pond. As expected, the silver charcoal wasn't completely smokeless. After a day and a night, his entire body was already dark and swarthy. His face had also turned black, leaving only a pair of distinct black and white eyes. His lips were red and his teeth were white, looking really eye-catching. Just as he was laughing bitterly in his heart, he saw Chu Shui look into the pond, her expression filled with shock. "Young master, you said you wanted to use the meridian spirit grass to refine pills to treat your dual meridian body. Were you actually refining a poison pill? Is it something that can be smeared on weapons or thrown into water to poison a large area? How quick?" She seemed to recall the time when Zhong Shou used a poison knife to force back Zhao Yanran. Chu Shui's eyes shone like stars. When Zhong Shou heard that, his face instantly flushed red, looking really awkward. However, in just a moment, he returned to normal. He scoffed, his expression calm and indiscernible. "It can't be considered a success. I'm just testing out the effects. Using meridian spirit grass to refine poison is something no one has done before, so I wanted to try it out. If this pill can be refined, even Xiantian experts can be taken down." As expected, Chu Shui's eyes were filled with worship. She was really looking forward to it, her expression filled with anticipation and anticipation. Suddenly, there were people who walked out from the corner in front of them. It was Xianyuan Yiren and Li Yunyang. Looking at Zhong Shou, the two of them frowned. Following which, Xianyuan Yiren's nose twitched as she asked curiously, "There's the smell of charcoal. This smell, is it medicine? I've never heard of it before. It's a little weird." A moment later, her eyes focused on Zhong Shou's right hand. She stepped off the ground and slid in front of Zhong Shou. She grabbed Zhong Shou's right hand that was touched by the powder and sniffed it. Her expression became weirder and weirder. In the end, she stuck out her small tongue and licked Zhong Shou's palm. Zhong Shou's body instantly shuddered, only feeling that his stomach was a little hot. As for Li Yunyang, her face was as black as a pot. Her needle-like gaze could pretty much slice Zhong Shou into thousands of pieces. Xianyuan Yiren didn't find anything weird, carefully tasting the smell of the powder. Only then did her brows relax. Meridian spirit grass as the main ingredient, also adding in Japanese root, palm ginseng, ziwei, inxiao right, also junjiang. Zhong Shou was stunned, staring in disbelief at Xianyuan Yiren, who had left yesterday and returned today. There were 20-odd ingredients in this meridian spirit pill, and none of them were wrong. What was this woman's tongue made out of? Only to hear Xianyuan Yiren say seriously, "Are you refining pills? The meridian spirit grass in Demon Corpse Mountain has slight poison and is seen as useless by pill refiners. Why are you using it to refine pills?" Zhong Shou wanted to say that he wasn't refining pills, but poison when he saw Xianyuan Yiren have an enlightened look, a bright glow exploding out of her eyes. No, the meridian spirit grass and junjiang ziwei can be used to soften the meridians in the body. The other ingredients are used to remove the poison. One amazing pill recipe. Zhong Shou, you want to use this to solve your dual meridian body? If you can use it along with a suitable body technique, there's a chance. Zhong Shou's mouth was agape as he looked at Xianyuan Yiren, thinking to himself that this girl was a demon. She just licked his palm, and she could even guess that. In the next moment, he felt another pair of eyes looking at him. It was Shui, only her expression was filled with disdain. Chapter 97. Laughing dryly, Zhong Shou acted like he didn't see the piercing gazes from the side, smiling awkwardly. "This is the pill refined from the meridian spirit grass. I didn't expect Miss Xianyuan to be so good at pill refining. Respect, respect." Who knew that on the side of Xianyuan Yiren, her face was filled with disdain? The medicinal theory is correct, but do you know how to refine pills? Do you understand medicine? Could it be that all the herbs were thrown into the cauldron to be refined? You really think you are smart, but you are really dumb. If you don't know how to refine pills, then don't waste these herbs. No matter how good Zhong Shou's temper was, at this moment, he was furious from embarrassment. Following which, he instantly became wary, his face turning solemn as he bowed respectfully towards Xianyuan Yiren. Speaking of which, Miss Xianyuan definitely knows how to refine this meridian spirit pill. Zhong Shou indeed doesn't know much about pill refining. "Young miss, please enlighten me. As the saying goes, if you don't know, you should ask. If you don't know, you shouldn't be ashamed to ask, so there was nothing to be embarrassed about. In his heart, he was also shocked. Just now, this woman's ability to differentiate between herbs was really extraordinary. Even those high-grade pill refiners in the future might not have such ability. Her pill refining skills definitely wouldn't be too bad. When Xinyuan Iren heard that, she frowned as expected, the expression on her face turning calm. If you want to refine this pill, you have to wait for 45 minutes before adding in the silver and palm. As for the other few, you need to choose the right time. If not, this pill will turn into a poison pill like you're doing now. Apart from that, after the herbs boil, you need to use the first 7 seals of the 12 Dan Xian seals to control the pill and expel the poison. When you open the furnace, you need to use the energy controlling technique to retract the pill and disperse the fire. Halfway through her words, Zhongsho was at a loss, his face filled with confusion. Xinyuan Iren couldn't help but feel helpless. Forget it. Even if I tell you the method, you won't be able to refine this pill. This involves some secret techniques in my sect. No wonder you don't know. I will just refine this Meridian Spirit pill for you. But if you succeed, you'll have to tell me where you got the recipe for the Meridian Spirit pill from. Where did this come from? If you're interested in learning, you can come in and watch. The tip of his nose sniffed and then followed the smell of the charcoal directly into Zhongsho's room. Zhongsho was startled, wondering why this girl's personality was so impatient. Before he even told her the complete pill formula, she had already started to refine it. Even if he knew the composition of the medicinal herbs, he wouldn't be able to guess the exact amount. How could he forge pills like that? At this moment, Li Yunyang also walked over. His eyes were filled with killing intent, even colder than yesterday. But it's strange that Miss also knows how to refine pills. Miss was accepted into the Pill Fountain sect 7 years ago. After only 3 years of learning, he was chosen by Old Man Ming Dan to be his last disciple. He was given the title of the #1 pill Dao talent in the sect, and he only needed 30 years to obtain all of his true teachings. Forget it. Why do I have to tell you all this? Shenshao sect, Pill Fountain sect, your father probably won't tell you about them. It's a waste of breath. Her words were filled with disdain. It was like she was too lazy to continue talking to Zhongsho. You only need to know that with Mrs. Identity, she isn't someone you, who can't even open your chakra meridians, can look up to. Even if one day she can solve your dual meridian body, you aren't worthy of her. If you have any self-awareness, then scram far away and stop bothering Miss. Her voice was as soft as a thread, only reaching 5 feet. However, Zhongsho could hear everything clearly. Chu Shue's watery eyes opened wide, and she was about to fall out with this girl. Zhongsho pulled her back, his face smiling. Pill Fountain sect? Zhongsho has heard of them, 7th of the 19 spiritual houses, right? I heard that their strength is comparable to the last 3 of the 10 shrines, and they specialize in pill refining. As for the mysterious Cloud Spirit sect, I have heard of them. 3rd of the 19 spiritual houses, their lightning spells are really amazing. Li Yunyang was startled, and then she laughed coldly. It's good that you know. All right, since Miss personally made your Meridian Spirit pill, she should be able to refine it in a day and a half. At that time, you could just come and get it. Her pill refining skills involve the secrets of her sect, so it's best if you don't watch from the side. After she said that, she walked into Zhongsho's room. Just as Zhongsho was about to be thick-skinned and follow in, the door closed with a pa sound. Chu Shui was furious when she saw that, spitting out her tongue towards the door. She scoffed, so arrogant. What are you being cocky for? She wasn't the one who became the disciple of Old Man Ming Dan. Also, don't bother me anymore. You were the ones who walked over. It wasn't young master who bothered you. Young master, if that girl knew that you have reached the out-of-body realm in just a few months and can travel at night without any problems, would her jaw drop? Oh right, your sword path is one with the spirit. She still didn't know what sword path being one with the spirit meant. However, since it could make that Zhao Yanran so shocked. Even Lei Dong, who was an ascended martial ancestor, was shocked. It must be an amazing thing, even more amazing than the out-of-body realm. Even the day before, when he was at the spirit cultivation realm and killed that Xiantian master, it was Zhong Shou. Zhong Shou burst out laughing when he heard that, flicking Chu Shui's head. I think you are the cocky one. This little ability is nothing in the eyes of those big sections. Don't say it out loud and let people laugh at you. Looking at his room door with slight resentment, Zhong Shou shook his head. Such a rare chance was ruined just like that. It was like that in his last life. Who knows how many times he wanted to take a look at the secret techniques of those big sects, but couldn't get it. He had completely relied on himself to figure out the martial Dao intent and the talisman technique. However, they were all unorthodox and didn't form a system. At this moment, there was no hope for him to watch from the side, so he had to find something else to do. Should he go to the back courtyard to train a set of fist techniques and wait for Xian Yuan, Iren's meridian spirit pill, to come out? Or should he try to use his soul to go out of body to further understand this realm? Suddenly, his heart moved. Zhong Shou turned his head and asked Chu Shui, "Is there any news of the sword that Uncle Ian is looking for?" Chu Shui was originally pouting, her little hand touching her head. When she heard that, she didn't dare to be slow. She hurriedly ran to the front courtyard. In just a moment, she carried a sword back, saying happily, "I found it. Yesterday, Uncle Ian had already found it. It is the pinnacle grade lightning tooth sword. I spent a full 20 grade, 3 beast crystals." Samurai's eyes lit up. After taking the sword, he pulled it out, only to see that the sword was a green-blue color. On it there were lightning arcs flashing. Grade 3 beast crystals were 1,000 gold, 100,000 silver. 20 of them would be 20,000 gold. In the past, when he was at the treasure weapon house, he spent a grade 3 beast crystal to order a pine pattern wind sword. This sword was 2 grades higher than the pine pattern wind sword and was also a rare item. This price was already a little cheap. Just as he was about to activate his soul power to activate the runes on the sword, only to hear Chu Shui open her mouth. There is also a spiritual weapon. Uncle Ian searched for half a day. Although there is one in the city, no one is willing to sell it. However, Uncle Ian heard that there's a pawn shop in Cloud Saint City that is auctioning a spiritual weapon, so he went there to wait. I heard that a year ago, someone used that sword to exchange for 100 grade 3 beast crystals. Till now, no one has come to take it. Chapter 98. Spiritual Sword? Only pawning it for 100 grade 3 beast crystals? Zhong Shou was startled, following which he clicked his tongue. This pawn shop really earned a lot. Chu Shui nodded her head in agreement. The crafting of a spiritual sword was much harder than a talisman sword. The materials used were often extremely rare. Even the worst spiritual weapon would be 10 times more expensive than the lightning tooth sword in Zhong Shou's hands. Sometimes even if one had money, one wouldn't be able to buy it, just like what they were doing now. 100 grade 3 beast crystals for a spiritual weapon. This business was really profitable. After exclaiming, Zhong Shou felt that the lightning tooth sword in his hands, which had surprised him just now, was a little useless. The reason why Yin Yang found a top-grade talisman sword was because he had learned a secret technique in his last life to nurture a sword, along with the unique sword washing technique and the strengthening of little gold. It could allow a talisman weapon to have a portion of the abilities of a spiritual weapon. Who knew that there would be such a surprise in Cloud Saint City? Placing the sword in his hands at his waist, Samurai's eyes shone. In just a short moment, he said decisively, "Forget it, this place is boring. Let's go take a look on the streets." Chu Shui blinked her eyes in shock, but she didn't object. She knew that with Zhong Shou's current ability, as long as he was in Cloud Saint City, no one would be able to hurt him. Since he was at the spirit cultivation realm, he could kill Xiantian masters. Now that he could travel at night, naturally he didn't fear anything. The place where the pawn shop auctioned items was at the west of the city, a tea house beside the river. After all, it wasn't as professional as in the future where there were many auction houses. What they were doing now was to gather all the rich and powerful people in the city together and start selling after they had stored enough goods in the storehouse. However, before Zhong Shou rushed over, he went to the weapon shop that ordered talisman knives. The 50 cloud pattern talisman knives weren't made yet. However, he didn't come here to get knives. He drew some scattered parts and placed an order here. It was also an external bone, but it was different from the previous wind travel spirit bone. The latter only required a small amount of soul power to activate, but it could only be used for walking. If one had enough energy, it could be used for several days and nights. Its weakness was that it could not be used in battle, and its strength was not very high. At this moment, Zhongshou had customized an external bone that could be said to be at the entry level. Not only was it not easy to damage, it could also increase one's strength by nearly 5,000 gene. However, the amount of soul force required was 10 times more than before. He also felt that the wind-walking spirit bone had dropped the ball halfway. This time, Zhongshou ordered 2 sets, as well as some key spare parts in case of replacement. The forging itself was not difficult and was similar to forging a middle-level seal soldier. Coincidentally, the delivery date was the same as the talisman knife. When Zhongshou arrived at the tea house, he saw that not only was the place exquisite, but it was also located by the river. The scenery was beautiful, and it added a bit of elegance. However, in the vicinity of the tea house, there were groups of armored soldiers guarding the area. They were all muscular men, grade 4 and above martial masters, and they were all filled with killing intent. He could also feel the aura of tens of Xiantian experts around, which surprised him. Zhongshou was also at a loss. It was just a spiritual weapon. Was there a need for such a huge formation? Could it be that the highlight of today's auction was something else? He didn't understand, but he still stepped into the tea house. His clothes were luxurious, and the guards didn't stop him. Then he saw that the building was already filled with people. However, Yin Yang had booked a private room on the 2nd floor of the restaurant. Who knows if it was because this pawn shop knew about their wealth, or because of the Cloud Saint City Lord. When they met, Yin Yang frowned, his face filled with worry. Although this place is within the city, there are all sorts of people here. No matter how well the Cloud Saint City protects, there will be times when they are careless. How can young master take the risk? Zhongshou looked at Chu Shui, only to see the latter scratching her face in embarrassment. He knew that this girl most probably didn't tell Yin Yang about him. As for the Cloud Saint City Lord, he could see that he didn't plan to have any connections with him. As a city lord, he didn't travel far, but he wasn't in the city for several days. How was that possible? It was probably because of Lei Dong that he took care of him. Since he wasn't willing to meet him, Zhongshou wasn't so thick-skinned as to stick to him. Such a situation was for the best. There were too many people here, and it wasn't easy to explain to Yin Yang. Zhongshou giggled as he touched his nose, not saying a word as he walked into the room and sat down. The windows on both sides were opened, and one side was able to look into the inner hall of the tea house. However, the moment Zhongshou sat down, he saw a confused gaze looking over at him from the opposite side. Zhongshou was also stunned, only to see a person standing in the corridor outside the window. It was Zhongling. That gaze was a little shocked before it turned into a teasing one. Cousin actually has the mood to come here to watch the show at such a time. It seems like these few days in Cloud Saint City have been really happy. Beside him, Fengxiao was also there, but he didn't make a sound. His expression was solemn as he looked at Yin Yang, who had stepped into the Xiantian realm, his expression changing. Zhong Shaxin sighed in his heart. Why were the two of them like dog-skin plasters? So clingy. No matter where he went, he would meet them. Following which he heard a soft scoff. Do you really think that this small Cloud Saint City lord can protect you? There are numerous experts in Donglin Cloud Continent. Even in the east of Donglin Cloud Continent, there are 4 powers stronger than Cloud Saint City. There are many people who can deal with him. Do you know that the purple lightning spear under 7th brother Zhong Yang has personally come here? While Zhongling spoke, his gaze looked to the other side. Zhongshou followed his gaze and looked over, only to see a person wearing a golden robe sitting in another suite. His back was as straight as a spear, his sitting posture so dignified that one couldn't find anything wrong with it. He was around 20 years old. His face inherited the handsomeness of the sky, fox bloodline, but it was extremely cold. Beside him was a spear wrapped in cloth. He expressionlessly looked at Zhongshou before retracting his gaze, like he wasn't interested in him at all. Although there were two Xiantian masters beside him, they were covered by this person's sharpness, such that one didn't notice them. Zhongshou's brows furrowed. After obtaining the memories of the past 13 years, he roughly knew the situation of Gantian Mountain. He also had an impression of this person. It was said that he was a member of the Sky Fox Zhong family, the most outstanding person in this generation of Sai bloodline disciples. He was recruited by Zongyang's branch and was extremely loyal to them. In the past, Zhong Weiran also felt that it was a pity personally calling him a talent in front of him. Not only was he regretful that he couldn't be used by him, but he was also a side bloodline disciple. Even if his talent wasn't weaker than the direct bloodline, he was destined to be a chess piece for others. Strength of the martial path? Not bad. Squinting his eyes, Zhongshou instantly had a rough idea of this person's strength. He should be the peak of Xiantian Master, 3 meridians of the Earth Chakra level. However, what he cared about more was that the appearance of this purple lightning spear here meant that the situation of Gantian Mountain had changed. In the next moment, he heard Zhongling scoff coldly. However, cousin, you are really lucky. Chapter 99. As for Zhongshou's luck, what was so good about it? Zhongling didn't elaborate. He directly walked past and sat down in a room not far away. As for Huang Xiao, before he left, he looked at Yin Yang and said, "That purple lightning spear Zhong Yuan didn't come to Cloud Saint City to kill the prince. However, Brother Yin needs to be careful. Do you know that 6 days ago that person from Yunxiao Mountain sent 2,000 Firewolf cavalry to enter Dongwei Mountain?" Yin Yang's brows tensed up, slightly nodding his head as a reply. He didn't comment and didn't say whether or not he believed it. In Zhongshou's heart, he thought to himself that it was as expected. The situation of Gantian Mountain had changed. Dongwei Mountain was a place that was also located west of Donglin Cloud Continent. It was 3,700 miles south of Gantian Mountain. Not only was it a strategic location, but it was also really close to ancient Crane City that Gantian Mountain controlled. If one used the wind stepping foals to gallop at full speed, it would only take 2 hours. As for the Firewolf cavalry, they were really famous in Donglin Cloud Continent. It was said that the weakest one was a grade 5 martial master, and there were hundreds of mythic masters. Moreover, it was an army made up of young men from the Firewolf race who were born with the ability to control fire. They were one of the most elite forces of Yunxiao Mountain. As for the specific situation, Zhongshou wasn't too sure. He only knew that ancient Crane City was the support of Gantian Mountain in the south. Many cities rose up in Donglin Cloud Continent, intersecting with one another. There were even countries within countries. Although Gantian Mountain controlled millions of monsters in 4 provinces, it didn't include all the humans in the region. They only controlled tens of monster race cities spread out all over. As they were strong, there were many human race cities that relied on the wings of Gantian Mountain. This ancient Crane City was not only a strategic pass, but it was also a trading center. It also controlled a province of monster race, as well as tens of human race cities within 1,000 miles. Once it was taken down, thousands of miles south of Gantian Mountain would fall into the hands of the enemy. Before this, there were no external enemies. Zhongshu and Zhongyang fought so hard for the Monster King position. Zhongshou was also in a precarious situation. However, with a huge enemy on the side, if they wanted to ensure that Gantian Mountain didn't lose power, they needed to work together to face the enemy. If they lost this foundation, it would not benefit anyone. If he died now, it would be a disaster for Gantian Mountain. The collapse of the people's hearts was to be expected, even if those 3 still wanted to make a move on him. The many race leaders of Gantian Mountain, and even the elders of the Sky Fox Zone family, most probably wouldn't agree. Thinking of this, Zhongshou could not help but laugh. So that was the case. The reason why he was able to keep his life after being chased out of the Soaring Cloud sect and become the Demon King for a few years was probably because of this Yunxiao Mountain. Since the east wind could not suppress the west wind and no one could gain an advantage, then it was naturally the best choice to support a puppet that everyone could accept. However, in his heart, he was shocked. The people of Yunxia Mountain were just too dumb. If it was him, wouldn't it be better if he kept his claws and waited for the enemy to fall into chaos? They were so impatient to let the 2,000 Firewolf cavalry enter Dongwei Mountain. That was really dumb. Who was the monster king of Yunxia Mountain? He didn't remember. Logically speaking, to be able to use the strength of 3 provinces to go up against Zhong Weiran for 5 years and only be at a disadvantage, he shouldn't be a dumb person. Was there another reason? Just as Zhong Shou was having random thoughts, he saw Huang Xiao smile at him. The prince needs to be careful. Gantian Mountain still needs the prince to inherit. Not only the people of Yunxia Mountain, but even Blazing Flame Mountain might attack the prince. Although the purple lightning spear has arrived in Cloud Saint City, the head of the Yunxia 7 Swords of Yunxia Mountain has also arrived a day ago and is right here. After he finished, he bowed respectfully. Only then did he leave and enter Zongling's room. Zhong Shou was at a loss. He knew that the purple lightning spear was Zhong Yuan because he was from the Sky Fox Zhong family. As for the Yunxia Mountain 9 swords that Huang Xiao mentioned, he had never heard of it before. Yin Yang's body shook, his sharp gaze sweeping around. In just a moment, he focused on the hall below. At a round table in the far left corner, a middle-aged man in black with a thin face was sitting alone. The seats beside him were all empty, but no one dared to get close. Seemingly noticing Yin Yang's gaze, that person swept back before turning his head around. He had a centipede tattoo on his face, making him look really vicious. His gaze was extremely cold. Zhong Shou's eyes constricted. This person was actually an Earth Chakra 3 Meridian, the peak of the Xiantian Master. After a martial master entered the Earth Chakra realm, each additional chakra meridian open would cause a huge change in their strength. The old man who died at the hands of Zhong Shou that day was only an Earth Chakra 2 Meridian. In Blood Spirit Valley, his strength was limited, and the person in front of him was the same as the purple lightning spear. He already had the strength of the martial path. He was just half a step away from the martial ancestor realm. Just as he wanted to ask Yin Yang about the background of this person, the entire tea house suddenly quietened down, only to see over 10 green-robed men escorting an old man to the center of the tea house. In their hands, they each held a tray that was covered by silk cloth. They placed them on a table in an orderly manner. That old man first cupped his hands towards the surroundings and said a few words. It was something along the lines of being loved by everyone and being extremely grateful. Just as Chu Shui was getting impatient, the old man opened his mouth. Only then did the man stop talking and lift the silk cloth on the first tray. Surprisingly, it was a sword that lay quietly within it. Pure black in color, the sword was covered in wavy patterns. The entire tea house was so silent that one could hear a pin drop. No matter if they were martial cultivators or spirit masters, their gazes were all burning as they looked within the tray. Only to hear the old man explain, "All of you should know about it. This item is something a year ago that a Xiantian master used 100 grade 3 beast crystals as collateral. Now that the collateral period has passed, it can be sold. Whether or not it is real or fake, all of you can sense it and you will know. Today we will use 100 grade 3 beast crystals as the base price. The highest bidder will get it." When those words were said, the tea house was still completely silent. Everyone looked on quietly, but didn't bid. Although this sword was precious, apart from Xiantian masters and spirit cultivators, it was useless for others to buy it. On the contrary, it would cause problems. That old man wasn't in a rush. He knew that there were only a few people here who had the right to bid for this sword. He didn't rush them and just waited quietly. Zhong Shou also looked at the spiritual sword, his eyes filled with doubt. This black wave sword did not surprise him in any way. It couldn't be any more normal. Out of spiritual weapons, it could only be considered one of the weakest. But just now, when his eyes met hers, there was a mysterious feeling in his heart that was similar to telepathy. This is rhythm? Weird. Who knows who the owner of this sword is to be able to nurture the sword rhythm into the sword? He probably brought it along with him for 30 to 50 years, and it isn't damaged at all. No, it doesn't seem right. This feeling is unbreakable, nothing it can't break. How can it merge into one with a water element black wave sword? That sword rhythm was faintly discernible, hidden and not visible. Other people couldn't sense it, but Zhong Shou, who is extremely sensitive to martial intent, definitely wouldn't miss it. Chapter 100. A little weird. Just as Zhong Shou was in deep thought, there were already people bidding. It directly went to 200 grade 3 beast crystals, and then continued to climb until it reached 400 before slowing down. This was close to the normal price of the Black Wave Sword, and there were only a few people who continued to bid, all of them in a few rooms. Zhong Shou once again looked at the sword, and only when there were no more people bidding did he make a 9 sign towards Yin Yang. When Yin Yang saw that, although he was a little surprised, he didn't plan to go against Zhong Shou's intentions. However, before he was able to open his mouth, Chu Shui excitedly ran to the window and said, "My young master said 900 grade 3 beast crystals." In an instant, countless inquisitive gazes came out from the tea house and looked in all directions. They weren't shocked, but their eyes were filled with surprise. There were many grade 3 beasts in the world. However, to form a qualified grade 3 beast crystal, it would take tens of years of accumulation. Often when it was formed, these beasts were already standing at the peak of grade 3, which was why, although there were many mythic masters who hunted beasts for a living, even if they spent their entire lives, they would at most be able to form 5 to 600. 900 grade 3 beast crystals was close to double the price of this Black Wave Sword. It was enough to buy a grade 1 spiritual sword that was crafted well. Most of the gazes that looked over were filled with disdain. Zhongling, who was not far away, was the same. She stared over with a "you are really stupid" expression. Zhong Shou didn't bother, quietly waiting for the result. After a few breaths, no one made a bid, just as that old man was prepared to give up waiting. A low voice sounded out from below. 1,000 grade 3 beast crystals. Zhong Shou looked over, only to see that the person who spoke was the black-shirt middle-aged man sitting alone in the corner. At this moment, the people in the tea house were all shocked. What was weird was that when Zhong Shou made a bid of 900, everyone treated him as an idiot. However, when the black-shirt middle-aged man raised the price to 1,000, no one dared to underestimate him. Instead, they once again sized up the sword, trying to find what was special about it. Shaking his head to himself, Zhong Shou didn't hesitate, once again stretching out 5 fingers toward Chu Shui. Chu Shui instantly understood, once again shouting toward the window, 5,000 grade 3 beast crystals. This time, most of the rich people here couldn't breathe. Many of the people here couldn't even save a tenth of this price. 5,000 beast crystals were more than enough to buy the lives of 3 to 5 Xiantian masters. Who knew who was within the room? Just for this ordinary-looking sword, to bid such a shocking number. That black-shirt middle-aged man's expression didn't change, taking in a deep breath before opening his mouth once more. 5,001. Zhong Shou grinned, waving his index finger towards Chu Shui. However, this time it wasn't only Yin Yang who frowned. Even Chu Shui hesitated. Being stared at by Zhong Shou, she barely opened her mouth. 10,000 grade 3 beast crystals. The moment she said that, Zhongling couldn't help but scold out. "Zhong Shou, I think you're crazy. Argantian Mountain has 7 million people, 3,000 mythic masters, and we only hunt 200,000 grade 3 beasts a year. Along with the contributions from the cities, we only get 100,000 grade 3 beast crystals a year. You spent 10,000 grade 3 beast crystals just for a broken sword? Even if you want to squander, you don't have to squander like this. What's so special about that sword? I don't believe that someone who hasn't even opened his chakra meridians can see through it." Zhong Shou was unperturbed, not bothering at all. In his last life, he was used to being poor, and every day he spent carefully. In this life, his luck was good, becoming the prince of the Monster King, a disciple of a big family with billions of dollars. Naturally, he couldn't be stingy. This feeling of using money to suppress people and not treating the beast crystals as a big deal felt really good. As for that Zhongling, he couldn't be bothered to bother about her. What does it have to do with you if I use mine? If I don't use up all these beast crystals, do I have to wait for the spiritual wave to devalue? Today, one grade 3 beast crystal was worth 1,000 gold. However, if it was 2 years later, 100 gold would be too high. The black-shirt, middle-aged man downstairs looked over once more. His eyes were filled with no anger. He laughed, filled with disdain. What an idiot! The people at the side were startled, but in just a moment they understood. The person in the corner was most likely just making fun of the person in the private room upstairs. Immediately, he smiled. The old man hosting the auction also smiled happily, but he was also a little worried. No one would have thought that an ordinary black wave sword could be sold for a sky-high price of 10,000 pieces. This sword was only pawned for 100 grade 3 beast crystals, but he earned 99 times the price. However, with such a high price, how could the person who bid take it out? It wasn't until another shopkeeper-like person whispered a few words in his ear that the old man's face was filled with joy. He waved his hand and asked someone to send the sword to Zhongsho's suite. He even found a witness from the Sanlu Bank and wrote down the proof, like he was afraid that Zhongsho would go back on his words. Only when these few people left in satisfaction did they leave. Zhongsho picked up the black wave sword and placed it in his hand to take a good look. At this moment, the items being auctioned were pills and talismans for martial cultivators and spirit masters. There were also antiques and some house deeds. Zhongsho wasn't interested at all, only focusing on studying the sword in his hand. Zhongling was still cursing and scolding in the private room. He seemed to be a little tired, and his tone was filled with mockery. The ruler has been a hero for his entire life. How did he give birth to such a dumb son? If the spirit in the underworld knew that his life savings were squandered by you, would he spit out blood from anger? Dual meridian body, not being able to cultivate is okay, but his brain is actually so dumb? Which one of the people of Yunxia Mountain didn't go back on their word? If the price is too high and he directly goes back on his words, who can do anything to him? You are so dumb. Zhongling was blabbering on. On the other side, there was a cold gaze that looked over. It was purple lightning spear Zhong Yuan. Zhongsho acted like he didn't see or hear anything. Although Chu Shui was angry, at this moment she felt weak. She couldn't find any words to retort. Only Yin Yang's expression didn't change, looking seriously at the black wave sword like he wanted to help Zhongsho find out what was so valuable about this sword. As expected, it is a little weird. Zhongsho looked at it for a moment before flicking the body of the sword, giving out a ding that didn't stop for a long time. Listening for a moment, Zhongsho focused his gaze on the handle of the sword. Although the sword body was black and swarthy, the handle was inlaid with 10 pearls, and there were tens of weird talismans drawn on it. Zhongsho tried, plucking all the pearls and playing with them for a moment. Then, Yin Yang and Chu Shui only heard a cracking sound. In the next moment, numerous tightly sealed energy seemed to have found an outlet and charged out. It pierced numerous transparent holes in the wooden walls. Then, a sharp energy suddenly rose up, forcefully breaking open the roof of Zhongsho's room. In Zhongsho's hand, a small sword appeared. It was 2 feet long and shone with a cold light. At this moment, the gazes of everyone in the tea house looked over once more. This time, they were not only shocked. It's a grade 3 spiritual weapon. Chapter 101. The slightly skilled martial cultivators in the restaurant could only sense that it was a grade 3 spiritual weapon. Those Xiantian masters all stood up abruptly. They were all attracted by the sharp intent. Their eyes filled with shock as they looked towards Zhongsho's room. Their gazes slowly heated up, their expressions filled with disbelief. It's sword intent. It's actually sword intent. There's actually such a profound principle within the Black Wave sword. Zhongling was startled, looking at the scene in front of him at a loss, not knowing how to react. Although he hadn't reached the Xiantian realm, he had learned a lot from his family. He knew that this sword wasn't ordinary, and he could barely sense the martial path intent within the short sword. So there's a sword within a sword. Zhongsho broke out into a laugh as he looked carefully. He thought to himself, no wonder it felt so strange. Using metal to produce water, not only could it nurture this black wave sword, he could also make use of the layers of water element talismans to cover the extremely sharp sword intent on the metal element spiritual sword. Speaking of which, not only the short sword in his hand, but even the black wave sword that was like a sword sheath was also extraordinary. He raised his brows and looked over. As expected, the other pure black sword beside him was also giving off a faint spiritual light. Without restricting the martial path sword intent within, the body of the black wave sword seemed to have some more water patterns, flickering on and off, looking extremely beautiful. However, when his eyes looked out of the window once more, he saw that the purple lightning spear Zhong Yuan had instinctively grabbed onto the spear bag beside him, his eyes shining brightly. The black shirt middle-aged man below also squinted his eyes, his hand holding onto the hilt of his sword. The other few Xiantian masters all breathed heavily, their eyes filled with a fierce glow as they looked on hesitantly. In the distance, there were a few people who had locked onto him from afar. The atmosphere in the tea house became extremely cold in an instant. It also caused the rich merchants and nobles of Cloud Saint City to break out in cold sweat, not daring to move at all. For all martial cultivators above the Xiantian martial master level, other than Qi refinement, martial Dao intent was also crucial. Rhythm, force, intent, spirit, soul, and spirit. As long as a martial artist had some achievements in these aspects, not only would their battle prowess increase, they would also be able to break through talisman techniques and fight against spirit masters. It was the best aid in breaking through the heaven and earth chakra meridian. Of the Xiantian masters gathered here, only Zhong Yuan and the head of the Yunxia Seven Swords had comprehended the force of the martial path. The others had only reached the rhythm level. The path it walked was also slightly different from the sharp sword intent on the sword that could break through anything. However, if he could comprehend this sword, he would definitely have a breakthrough. Zhongsho wasn't surprised at all. He calmly waved the short sword in his hand towards the outside. I don't have any use for this thing. It just so happens that there are so many heroes gathered here today. Why don't we use this treasure land to hold an auction as well? The starting price is 3,000 grade, 4 beast crystals, the highest bid wins. Or we can exchange items for items. Pills are best, talismans that can be used are also okay. While he spoke expressionlessly, Zhongsho's left hand was still on the black wave sword. Threads of spiritual energy injected into it as he smiled. Today, if someone dared to snatch it, he wouldn't mind sacrificing blood to this sword. Today, he needed a head to show his might. Within the entire tea house, there was a slight commotion before it regained silence. A grade 3 beast crystal was worth 100,000 silver. Grade 2 beast crystals were around 10,000 silver. It was the same for grade 1. It was a difference of 10 times. Once it reached grade 4, the difference was close to 100 times. Not only were there very few Xiantian realm beasts, but they were also hard to hunt. 3,000 grade 4 beast crystals had already exceeded the price that Zhongsho paid for the black wave sword. However, at this moment, no one felt that it was expensive. A normal grade 1 spiritual weapon was around 500 grade 3 beast crystals to 1,000. However, a grade 3 spiritual weapon's price rose by tens of times. The martial path intent contained within caused the price of this sword to increase once more. Not only could one comprehend the sword intent and use it to aid in battle, but one could also use the martial path intent within. Although this sword was only grade 3, it had the power of a grade 5 spiritual weapon power. Not to mention 10 times, even 100 times was worth it. However, the people present were still silent. They all kept silent and exchanged glances. The sword made people drool. Zhongsho's price wasn't high. However, 3,000 grade 4 beast crystals was a price that no one in the tea house could afford. The spear in Zhong Yuan's hand had already been taken out from the holster. The green-blue spear body and purple-red spear blade were shining with a metallic glow. His hand loosened and tightened, tightened and loosened like he was weighing the pros and cons. The vicious intent in his eyes was like a flood. The black shirt, middle-aged man below was the same. His hand rubbed the sword handle like he was choosing the best time to attack. However, just as the atmosphere was slowly becoming tense and on the verge of exploding, a cold voice suddenly rang out within the tea house. "What a good broken blade sword." Along with those words, a white-robed man suddenly walked out from a room near the river. The moment this person appeared, there seemed to be a cooling intent that seeped into the hearts of everyone. It caused the heavy atmosphere in the tea house to instantly slow down. Even Zhong Yuan, whose killing intent was boiling, frowned slightly. He couldn't raise up any fighting intent. The spear in his hand seemed to have become unfamiliar, unable to stab out at all. The man's face was filled with a smile as he looked at the spear in Zhong Shou's hand. I originally had a sudden idea to see what a grade 4 mutated cloud whale baby looked like. Who knew that I would bump into this spiritual weapon? My Lingyun sect has been searching for this sword for 200 years, but we still couldn't find it. So it was hidden within this black wave sword. Prince Zhong really has good luck this time. Zhong Shou's brows furrowed. Actually, just by looking at his clothing, he knew that this white-robed man was definitely a Lingyun disciple. In his heart, he felt slightly disappointed. He had other intentions for taking out this sword. He wanted to kill him, but who knew that he would bump into this person? Today, he probably wouldn't be able to get what he wanted. Who would have thought that a Lingyun sect disciple would coincidentally appear in such a place? As expected, in the next moment, a small pill bottle appeared in the right hand of the white-robed teen. He held it in his palm. Since Prince asked for 3,000 grade 4 beast crystals, then how about I, Zhu Rinquang, buy this broken blade sword? The value of this sword is no less than a grade 5 spiritual weapon. I don't have many beast crystals, but I won't take advantage of you. 2 human pinnacle pills are worth 3,600 grade 4 beast crystals. I will exchange for this sword with other items. A buzzing sound suddenly rose up from the ground. Numerous people were whispering to one another. No one was paying attention to the sword in Zhong Shou's hand. A large half of the people were looking at the sword in Zhu Rinquang's hand. A human pinnacle pill only needed 3 to 5 years to allow a person who had never cultivated to step into the Xiantian realm. Xiantian masters were not only strong in martial arts. Their lifespan would also increase, and they could live 50 more years than normal people who didn't cultivate. Some people who took good care of their bodies could live up to 180 years old. This was why although Zhong Shou's broken blade sword was more valuable. Within this tea house, it wasn't as eye-catching as this human pinnacle pill. Chapter 103. Zhong Yuan's face was dark and sunken. His eyes were burning as he looked at the pill bottle. Zhong Shou's broken blade sword could allow him to comprehend a stronger spear strength. As for this human pinnacle pill, it could make his internal cultivation foundations even firmer. No matter which one it was enough for a Xiantian master like him to dream of. He silently kept the spear back into the cloth case and sat down once more. That black shirt middle-aged man did the same, retracting his hand from the sword at his waist. Although the human pinnacle pill was good, it was something that Zhu Rinquang took out. The broken blade sword was something that many people coveted, but it was something that Zhu Rinquang wanted. In Donglin Cloud Continent, apart from those hidden sections, which force could be stronger than the Lingyun sect? Even if they didn't fear him, at this moment, no one was the opponent of Zhu Rinquang. There were so many Xiantian masters here, so who would dare to be arrogant in front of him? Zhong Shou sighed as he looked at the pill bottle. After a short while, he shook his head. This human pinnacle pill is not bad, but it is useless to me. If I want to exchange for items, Zhong Shou would rather have beast crystals. Same grade beast spirit stones are also okay. Since he couldn't kill him to show his might, then it wasn't bad to exchange for something from this person. Zhu Rinquang was startled, his brows furrowing. I know that the prince is a dual meridian body and can't cultivate. However, your 2 servants can use my 2 human pinnacle pills. However, when his gaze swept across Yin Yang and Chu Shui, he understood, so that's the case. One of you has a solid foundation and doesn't need external help. The other has already consumed a human pinnacle pill a few days ago. No wonder you don't like my pill. Taking in a deep breath, Zhu Rinquang smiled. Then how about adding this item? Although the prince most probably won't be able to use it, these few items added together can barely be compared to this human pinnacle pill. With a wave of his sleeve, he took out a silver-white crystal and threw it into the box along with the bottle of pills. Zhongsho caught in his hand, and without looking at it carefully, he threw the broken blade sword to Zhu Rinquang. He knew that this was the lowest price that this person could offer. He had already made a lot of money, so he wouldn't be able to extort anything else. If he continued to raise the price, this Zhu Rinquang might just flick his sleeves and leave on the spot. After throwing the sword away, he finally had the time to look at the item in his hand. He didn't even need to open the bottle to know that it was genuine. A large sect like the Cloud-Soaring sect would not go so far as to resort to swindling. What caught his attention was the crystal. Its surface was silvery white, sparkling and extremely dazzling. When he touched it in his hand, it felt like amber. It should be a level 6 soul stone. However, a silver bear with its arms open and roaring could be faintly seen sealed within. Outside of the surface, there were tens of runes carved on it, simple and mysterious. Its aura was retracted, and it looked like a normal soul stone. So it was a protector spirit beast that sealed the soul of a level 6 elite beast within the soul stone. Its grade only dropped by a grade, so most of the strength of the beast, when it was alive, could be preserved. The person who made the spirit beast was definitely Day, Wandering Realm, and above. Most probably also skilled in talismans. No wonder that Zhu Rinquang would say that he most probably had no use for this item. Logically speaking, to subdue this protector spirit beast, one would at least need to be at the Night Wandering Realm. Zhongsho's eyes flashed, and without making a sound, he kept the soul stone into his sleeves, following which he smiled towards Chu Shui. Shui, come over and open your mouth, ah. Chu Shui instinctively wanted to open her cherry lips, but in that instant, she thought back to 2 days ago. Her brows furrowed, hesitantly moving to the side of Zhongsho, saying bitterly, "Young master, do we still have to run?" Actually, that human pinnacle pill was really sweet, even more delicious than candy. However, when she thought back to the torture of Zhongsho, Chu Shui was a little worried. "Why do you speak so much nonsense?" Zhongsho directly kicked her leg, and Chu Shui's body instantly felt numb. Her mouth couldn't help but open, and then a red pill was thrown into her mouth. This time she carefully tasted it before Chu Shui swallowed it. It was indeed delicious, but she still had a bargain. "Young master, I will just run. I won't learn your Dao Yin technique." Zhongsho smiled, throwing the pill bottle to Yin Yang. After the latter received it, he didn't feel any pity, directly crushing the bottle and swallowing the remaining human pinnacle pill. This item was really precious and was a top-grade spiritual pill for the body wheel realm. Numerous cultivators dreamed of it. Carrying it on one's body would only invite trouble. Now that he had used it in front of so many people, it would instead cut off these people's thoughts. This human pinnacle pill wasn't of much use to him, but it could still save him 2 years of cultivation. On the other side, Zongling's eyes were red. "Zhongsho, I think you are really crazy. A human pinnacle pill, even if eaten separately, is enough to create 4 to 5 Xiantian masters for our Sky Fox Zone family. You let these 2 servants spoil it. I will definitely report today's matter to the elders of the Zone family, and they will definitely give an explanation." Zhong Yuan's eyes were filled with rage as he stared over like he was spitting fire. The veins on his hand were popping out, as if he was extremely angry. Zhongsho's lips curled up, thinking to himself, if I don't use it now, am I going to wait for people to snatch it from me? If I obediently give this pill to you, Zongling, and that purple lightning spear, you will be satisfied, right? Will you show mercy to me in the future? Not willing to bother, Zhongsho looked down at the black-shirt middle-aged man, smiling slightly. "That's right. Uncle Ian, I remember that just now someone said that I am a prodigal son, that my brain is really stupid and can't be saved. Uncle Ian, what do you think? Am I, Zhongsho, a stupid person? Yin Yang smiled when he heard that, his lips curling up as he bowed slightly towards Zhongsho. The prince isn't stupid, selling a black wave sword for 50 times the price. The person who said that the prince is stupid is the one who is really stupid. Zongling's face was ashen white. Just now, out of everyone in the restaurant, he was the one who scolded the most. Moreover, he scolded in front of Zhongsho. All of a sudden, he was shocked, not knowing whether or not Zhongsho was a blind cat bumping into a dead mouse. Or did he really know that the sword had other secrets, which was why he bid 10,000 beast crystals to buy it? In the hall below, the black-shirt, middle-aged man's eyes were extremely dark and sunken. Before this, he thought that he was gleeful, but looking at him now, it made one want to laugh. He wasn't willing to stay for a moment longer, scoffing coldly before flicking his sleeves and leaving. Similarly, the old man in charge of the auction had an ugly expression. His breathing was uneven, and his face was ashen white. He was so regretful that he wanted to beat his chest and stomp his feet. When he sold this black wave sword, why didn't he think about carefully appraising it? He didn't even dare to touch those pearls and talismans, afraid that he would damage the spiritual sword. If he asked someone who knew his stuff to appraise it, he would be able to do it. 2 human pinnacle pills, a grade 5 spirit beast, and 10,000 grade 3 beast crystals. How could the value be the same? This sword didn't need to be sold. As long as it was given to Ling Yun's sect, it would be enough for the family to prosper for tens of years. That Zhu Renquang's face was filled with joy as he kept the broken blade sword. When he heard that, he couldn't help but burst out laughing. Prince Zhongsho is truly an amazing person. Just now, the person who said that you were an idiot is really an idiot. You suddenly obtaining such a treasure will definitely attract people's greed. Although you don't have the human pinnacle pill, that grade 5 spirit beast will cause numerous spirit masters to want to snatch it and kill you. How about this? Within half a month, as long as you don't leave Cloud Saint City, I will protect you. I'll be able to keep you safe. There will be enough time for someone to deal with this item. Zhongsho's brows furrowed. Listening to Zhu Renquang's tone, he most probably didn't know about the recent pill spirit mound matter. If not, he definitely wouldn't say such words. However, he still slightly nodded his head as a form of thanks for this person's kindness. It was impossible for him to be wild with joy. Zhu Renquang was a little surprised, but he didn't care. He looked around the tea house before floating away, directly walking out of the tea house. Zhongsho didn't intend to stay any longer. He had already gotten the spiritual sword he wanted, along with 2 human pinnacle pills and a grade 5 spirit beast. Although he was a little interested in the grade 4 mutated cloud whale baby. However, compared to the grade 5 spirit beast in his hand, it wasn't much. At this moment, the gazes that were looking at him from all directions seemed to want nothing more than to tear him apart. No matter how thick his nerves were, he wasn't willing to continue staying here. After leaving the tea house, when the 3 of them walked onto the streets, it was already deep into the night. Zhongsho's smiling expression was filled with killing intent. Uncle Ian, what is going on with the Yunxia 7 swords? It refers to the 7 sword experts of Yunxia Mountain. They are all Xiantian masters, and it is said that 1 or 2 of them have already stepped into the martial ancestor realm. The one just now is called Ren Qianshou, and he calls himself the Deceitful Sword. Although he is the head of the Yunxia 7 swords, he is just the oldest. However, in these 2 years, it is said that his sword path has greatly improved, and even some 4 Meridian Earth Chakra ancestors can't beat him. Although Yin Yang has broken through to Xiantian, he knows that he isn't his opponent. Even with that human pinnacle pill, it is far from enough. As he said that, Yin Yang couldn't help but advise, Prince, just now you were a little rash. Even if you knew that the sword was a little mysterious, you could have left first. Why did you take it out and put us in danger? Today we were lucky that Zhu Renquang shocked us, which was why we didn't get into trouble. If he wasn't here, Yin Yang really doesn't dare to imagine what would happen in the future. He had suppressed these words in his chest for a long time, and now that he said it out loud, he felt much better. Zhongsho didn't agree or disagree, squinting his eyes as he looked forward. Yin Yang was also wary, following Zhong Shou's line of sight. Then he was shocked. He saw that the black-shirt, middle-aged man who had left ahead of them was walking over from the opposite side. His hand pressed on the sword, and his aura was shocking, causing the people on the streets to move aside. Only when he was 10 steps away from the three of them did he stop. Looking at Zhong Shou, after a long while, that black-shirt, middle-aged man laughed coldly. "I will remember what happened today. Within half a month, I will take your life." Chapter 104. This deceitful sword run, Qianshou, seemed to be waiting for Zhong Shou to say those words. He only glanced at the three of them coldly before swaggering off. Zhong Shou's brows furrowed slightly before relaxing. He asked curiously, "Then who are the other 6 people?" Yin Yang looked at Zhong Shou's expression and knew that what he said just now was useless. After sighing slightly, he patiently replied, "Although there are 7 people in the Yunxia 7 swords, other than this deceitful sword, Ren Qianshou, there's only Dark Sword Lu Qing and Void Sword Hong Kong, who are the most famous. They're all grandmasters, each of them overseeing a region. There were also 2 other people, Mist Sword Xie Jun and Fury Sword Yun Tao, who were always inseparable from Ren Qianshou. Their strengths are only a little weaker than Ren Qianshou." Zhong Shou knew what Yin Yang meant. Since Ren Qianshou was so confident, saying that he would take his life within half a month, then the people that came over from Yunxia Mountain weren't just deceitful sword. Since Mist Sword Xie Jun and Fury Sword Yun Tao often accompanied Ren Qianshou, they were most likely already here. However, at this moment, what he cared about more was that dark sword. It made him think back to his last life, the sword intent that he studied the most and grasped the deepest. In the God Emperor game, he was called the Sword Emperor. But in reality, his name also had the word dark in it. Who knows whether or not this person walked the same path as him, and whether or not he could give him some surprises. As Yin Yang said those words, his eyes were filled with violence. This person is arrogant, but he only needs 3 months. Yin Yang was confident that he wasn't inferior to him. However, he isn't his opponent now. "Prince, since the situation within Gantian Mountain has changed, if you have no choice, who knows, you might have to ask that purple lightning spear Zhong Yuan and Zhongling for help." Zhong Shou smiled when he heard that, but he still didn't reply. Even if those 3 from Gantian Mountain changed their minds and wanted to escort him back to the mountain to take over the position of Monster King, he would still be able to do so. However, there was one thing that would never change. That was to cut off his winged men and remove Zhong Weiron's influence. It would be better if he could borrow the help of others. If he really couldn't do it, he could do it himself. Furthermore, there was a certain level of tacit understanding between the 3 of them. Therefore, from the very beginning, he did not intend to borrow the strength of those 3 people. At this time, he was not in the mood to hide his strength. In this situation where he was surrounded by wolves, he probably could not hide it. It was better to openly show it to others. Let those who were still loyal to him see hope. Since he couldn't kill anyone today to establish his authority, he could only think about it in the future. After all, this was Cloud Saint City, and he had to give the city lord some face. With the foundation left behind by his father, he actually didn't need to resort to any schemes to take back the throne of the Demon King and control the 4 provinces. He could just break through it with brute force. Although this path also placed him in a dangerous place and would definitely attract the crazy counterattack of those 3 people. Even powers like Yunxia Mountain and Blazing Flame Mountain would go all out and not worry about anything. However, what Zhong Shou was not afraid of was such a life and death battle. In his last life, he was the head of the 7 emperors, the most outstanding talent in the cloud world for hundreds of years. Why would he be afraid of such small dangers? Although his martial path merged the strengths of hundreds of schools of thought, taking the essence and merging it all into one. The more knowledge one had, the more one could reach the God realm of the martial path. However, it was okay to prove one's path through killing. The essence absorbed from the lightning phoenix egg needed a certain amount of external pressure to stimulate its potential and digest the Xiantian essence energy that had settled in his bones, muscles, and chakra meridians. Directly skipping over the matter of the Yunxia Seven Swords, Zhongsho started to think about his fiancée. Who knows whether or not the Meridian Spirit Pill had been refined. His footsteps quickened, and when he returned to his courtyard, Zhongsho was stunned. He saw that Xianyuan Irin and Li Yunyang were once again missing. However, beside the furnace, there were 3 pill bottles placed neatly, as well as a note with the words, "The pill has been refined. Don't consume it." Zhongsho opened it and took a look. It was pure black, shaped like a dragon's eye, with a slight fishy smell. It looked similar to the Meridian Spirit Pill that he had refined before. However, this time he didn't even need to test it out. Zhongsho had a feeling. He knew that these pills were the true Meridian Spirit Pills. A total of 134 pills. I only used a third of the herbs I collected. I also only used 5 kilograms of silver charcoal. This girl actually only opened the cauldron once. The cauldron no longer has any residual heat. She should have only used 4 hours. Even with Zhongsho's vast knowledge, his eyes couldn't help but flash with shock. No wonder this girl was taken in as a disciple by that so-called old man Mingdan. No wonder that pill fountain sect would make her a direct disciple. This kind of alchemy talent was indeed extraordinary. At this moment, even he couldn't help but feel ashamed of himself for that Zhongsho from before. The so-called daughter of the heavens was probably like this. Who knows where these 2 girls went? They asked for a room in my courtyard, but I don't see them at all. They are so mysterious and hard to understand. Zhongshoxin was a little curious, but he was also eager to refine the Meridian Spirit Pills in his hands. The moment Chu Shui and Yin Yang returned to the courtyard, they both went into secluded meditation to refine the medicinal power of the Human Pinnacle Pill. Zhongsho also closed his room door and directly swallowed a Meridian Spirit Pill. A moment later, he felt that his limbs were soft and had no strength at all. Looking into his body, he saw that his chakra meridians were also slowly turning soft. Zhongsho's eyes lit up. He knew that the Meridian Spirit Pill that Xianyuan Irin refined was indeed effective. The moment the poison entered his body, it was neutralized. The medicinal effect also exceeded normal Meridian Spirit Pills by 30%, enough to be listed as a high-grade spiritual pill. His body was weak, but Zhongsho used his true qi to forcefully move his muscles and bones to stand up. First was the spiritual breathing fist, going from soft to hard. Next was the great blazing sun fist, going from hard to soft. When it came to the last move, the fist changed once more. The fist technique this time was both hard and soft. It was the little 5-round Enlightened King fist that Zhongsho learned in the last life. After training the foundation, breathing, and bone marrow, it was training the vital energy in the 5 organs. This little 5-round Enlightened King fist trained the vital energy in the 5 organs. It was a foundation-building fist technique that came from the Buddhist faction. After Zhongsho absorbed the lightning phoenix egg, he directly jumped over and advanced to the 7 meridian mythic master realm. He reached the stage of training the 6 organs, skin, muscles, and muscles. However, the vital energy and 5 organs still couldn't be neglected. The little 5-round Enlightened King fist still needed to be trained. However, at this moment, Zhongsho was only training these 3 sets of fist techniques to stretch his body. When his body slowly warmed up, Zhongsho's actions changed once more. It was so slow that it seemed a little strange. This was an external energy leading technique, but it was different from any of the energy leading techniques that Zhongsho had created in the past. During these few months, Zhongsho had been thinking hard day and night to come up with a set of postures, even to the point that he had totally given up on practicing spells and talismans. As a result, on the path of a spirit master, apart from his soul power being much stronger, everything else was a blank piece of paper. Cold sweat dripped down from his forehead. Zhongsho gritted his teeth, blood seeping out from the corner of his lips. With these postures, he would stretch his meridians. Sometimes he would correct them, but most of the time he would twist them. In his last life, Those people who used the Meridian Spirit Pill to correct their chakra meridians all had tools to help them. At this moment, not only did he not have any medicine to numb his limbs, but he could only rely on this energy-leading technique that he had deduced and tailored for himself. Sweat dripped down like rain. After 6 hours, his meridians once again became firm. Zongsho's entire body was drenched in water. The ground beneath his feet was also covered in large patches of water. He was totally devoid of energy as he laid paralyzed on the ground. He didn't have the strength to stand up. He could only gulp down large mouthfuls of the salt water that he had prepared. However, this time was different from before when he had used up all his energy. Lying on the ground for a full 10 hours, Zongsho slowly caught his breath. I nearly couldn't take it and wasted all my efforts. Hey, who knows, I might have really invented a secret method of extorting confessions by torture this time, especially for torturing people. The Meridian Spirit Pill and this set of postures are a perfect match. Even those ascended ancestors would collapse. Zongsho violently shook his head and forced himself to stand up. However, he still felt that his body was extremely weak. Even his divine soul felt weak and powerless. If someone tried to kill him now, he wouldn't be able to fight back at all. Zongsho instinctively frowned. He made up his mind. Unless he confirmed his safety or had a reliable protector spirit beast or protector spirit beast by his side. If not, even if he was beaten to death, he wouldn't use the Meridian Spirit Pill. However, when he looked into his body, Zongsho was slightly delighted. He could clearly feel that the 2 meridians in his body had been slightly corrected. Not only did they stretch out as he wished. At this moment, they weren't tangled together like a ball. Instead, they were separated from one another. Starting from his energy ocean, they were like a spiral structure that stretched out in all directions. The true chi within his chakra meridians also seemed to have some order. It circulated in the 2 meridians, attracting one another and repelling one another. Only in some areas they were still tangled together. This was because his energy-leading technique hadn't been perfected, and there were some areas that he couldn't train in. In the future, it still needed to be improved. Moreover, the modification of his meridians was only at the beginning. It is similar to what I expected. As expected, the energy conflicts are much less. However, I don't know how my spiral meridians are like when I use strength. Zongsho tested, slightly using the true chi in his body as he smacked the chair beside him. In the next moment, he saw this extremely sturdy ironwood chair shatter into pieces. Those fine wooden shrapnel were swept up by a whirlpool like power and scattered in all directions. Zongsho was totally startled. Originally, he only wanted to smash this ironwood chair into pieces and he would be satisfied. He didn't expect that it would end in such a situation. This spiral meridian structure was something he had no choice but to do. However, looking at it now, it seemed like it had a lot of potential. Chapter 105. Sister Yunyang, I know you don't like him. However, no matter how bad he is still my future husband. Li Yunyang's chest instantly felt stuffy and she couldn't breathe. Little miss, you really treat him as your fiancé? You want to waste your entire life for him? There are many talents in the cloud world. Even the most basic disciple of Pill Fountain Sect is much stronger than him. The mysterious moonwood brilliance technique that Little Miss cultivates needs to balance yin and yang. If you marry this piece of trash, don't you want to cultivate this technique? You love to refine pills, but if your cultivation stops, how will you refine the pills you want? Xinyuan Irin was startled, following which she shook her head firmly. Yunyang, I know you are doing this for my own good. However, in this world, everyone's personality is different. Maybe other girls wouldn't hesitate to give up on this marriage for me. However, I, Xinyuan Irin, only place a lot of emphasis on loyalty and loyalty. I like those talents too. In the past, I've also dreamed of someone wearing golden armor and riding on 7-colored auspicious clouds to marry me. I also wanted to refine all the pills recorded in the sect to see what the peak of the world was like. However, if I read it backwards, it is loyalty and loyalty. I remember that father told me, when I was young to not go against the path of loyalty and loyalty. I have always remembered it in my heart and didn't dare to forget. Li Yunyang not only had a headache, but her face was also cramping up. She thought to herself, "Old master, when you taught me all this, did you think that a few years later such a situation would occur? Would you regret what you said for the rest of your life? Little miss, you have to value loyalty and loyalty. However, you don't owe that Zhongsho anything. So why do you have to sacrifice your entire life?" "How do I not owe him anything? My father was able to rise up in Donglin Cloud Continent because of Uncle Weiron's help a few years ago. If it wasn't for my father having such a position, how would I be able to enter Pill Fountain Sect so early? Even if you don't owe him anything, breaking off the engagement when he's in danger is like hitting a man when he's down." When Xinyuan Irin said this, her brows furrowed. "Father taught me to be benevolent and righteous, but he forgot. He forgot the kindness of Uncle Weiran for 15 years. Speaking of which, our Xian Mountain City came because of Uncle Zone Weiran. Is it so important in his eyes? So important that he turned a blind eye to the danger of his beloved son?" Li Yunyang tasted bitterness in her mouth and felt weak all over. Xian Mountain City's millions of people, the life and death of a race, compared to the life and death of his good friend's son, which was more important, it was easy to understand. If he sacrificed the future of the millions of people in Xian Mountain City for this so-called brotherhood, it didn't fit the path of benevolence and righteousness. To be able to protect oneself, to know when to give up, and to adapt to the situation was a truly good city lord. Actually, I also know father's difficulties, and I don't intend to force him. However, the promise that her father had previously forgotten, she would remember it by her daughter. "I, Xinyuan Irin, will take care of my fiancé." Xinyuan Irin's tone changed, her expression becoming serious. "He does have a dual meridian body, but the meridian spirit pill that I refined today has some hope of curing him. I am good at pill refining, and one day I'll be able to find a way to make him cultivate." "Then is it 10 years or 20 years? Li Yunyang laughed coldly. "Even if one day you succeed, I think that Zhongsho will most likely hate you. Those guys are the most heartless, hiding under the wings of a girl. Not only will he not be grateful, but he might even feel ashamed and see you as an enemy. Even if he doesn't feel that way, how can he stop the mouths of others? No matter how good his personality is, if people talk about him too much, he will have a knot in his heart." Xinyuan Irin blinked her eyes in confusion, and then her eyes shone brightly as she looked at Li Yunyang. "Sister Yunyang, before you treat others well, you have to consider what they will think and how they will repay you. I don't care what others think of me or how they treat me. Irin just needs to treat him well, and I won't let him down in this life." Li Yunyang instantly felt totally helpless. Looking at the young girl's expression, for some reason, she felt ashamed of her own inferiority. Knowing that it was useless to try to persuade her now, she sighed. "Forget it. If little miss wants to be like this, then I have no choice. I swore in the past that I would follow little miss for the rest of my life. This time I'll go crazy with you. I only hope that little miss won't regret what happened today. I chose this path myself, so why would I regret it? Actually, he isn't as bad as Sister Yunyang said. After being scolded by me today, he was still able to bear with it and ask for advice. It can be seen that he is calm and humble, smart and eager to learn." Xinyuan Irin formed a seal with her hands, and the 9 red wooden pagodas rose into the air. They turned into the size of a finger and flew into her hand. Following which she thought back to how Zhongsho didn't come to the room to take a look after she started to refine pills. Helplessness flashed across her eyes. He was calm and humble, but he wasn't eager to learn. However, in her heart, she couldn't help but feel curious. "Sister Yunyang, you said that Zhongsho wasn't willing to follow you in. Then where did he go this afternoon?" A dark and sinister expression flashed across Li Yunyang's eyes. "It disappeared in an instant. I don't know the details. I only heard that the prince went to a tea house in the city and used 10,000 grade 3 beast crystals to buy a grade 1 spiritual sword. I don't know what happened after that. However, I heard that Zongshu's brother Zongling was there and was furious. 10,000 grade 3 beast crystals? Just to buy a grade 1 spiritual sword? Xianyuan Irin's hand trembled slightly as she sucked in a cold breath. The 9 spiritual flames that were being retracted nearly went out of control and exploded. After consuming the Meridian Spirit pill and sacrificing blood to the sword, Zongshu used a full 2 days to slowly recover his energy. This was also because he had the essence of the lightning phoenix egg on his body, which was why he was able to recover so quickly. If it was other people, they wouldn't be able to get out of bed without 10 days to half a month. For 2 consecutive days, Zongshu either drew talismans or reconstructed talismans in his room. The former was to refresh his talisman techniques and draw some talismans as backup. The latter wasn't for refining pills, but for other purposes. As for the pill furnace, after the Meridian Spirit pill was refined, he casually tossed it into the trash. His days were really leisurely. No one came to disturb him. All the nearby dangers were temporarily blocked out, causing Zongshu to have the illusion that he had returned to his last life, those peaceful and quiet times. Sometimes he would feel emotional that if he could continue to live in this courtyard, it would be great. However, this was just a fantasy. If he really had such thoughts, then he wouldn't be far from death. Apart from drawing the talisman formations, he also gave some pointers to Shui. This was simple, directly sending this brat to catch birds. Next was to nurture the sword. Every day in Zongshu's room, balls of black sword light danced about. Not only could it strengthen the spirituality of the sword, but could also increase his control over the Black Wave sword. He could also use this to familiarize himself with how spirit masters controlled artifacts. On the sword body, there were blood marks left by him. Even 10,000 feet away, he could control it as he wished. In just a few hours, Zongshu could control it as he wished. He could even split some of his attention to craft talismans. However, after 2 consecutive days of training, Zongshu still wasn't satisfied. This sword driving in the air is indiscernible and unpredictable, swift and changeable, able to kill people 1,000 miles away. However, its strength is a little weak. I can't add martial intent onto it and can only rely on the talisman techniques of the spiritual sword itself to injure people. I can bully those low-grade martial masters, but if I face Xiantians, I can only be a bystander. No wonder spirit masters above the out-of-body realm like shields, hammers, whips, and ropes. Either their attacks are shocking or they have other uses. Following which, he thought back to those spirit masters who focused on sword driving. Zongshuxin was filled with envy. Those sword cultivators use their own sword as their second soul. That sword is like their own body, able to activate sword intent. Unfortunately, I don't have a way to learn this second soul technique. If not, I can find a top sword embryo and grow it to be able to roar in the cloud world. However, with his current situation, it was naturally impossible for him to find a good sword embryo. As a second soul, this Black Wave sword was just asking to die. To use this Black Wave sword to add martial intent to go up against those martial masters. Unless his soul went out of his body and used his soul to wield the sword. With the sword techniques he had in his last life, he only needed one sword in his hand. Below martial ancestor, he was confident that he would be invincible. However, with that, the requirements for the protector spirit beast were really high. The rising moon lion is good at hiding and running swiftly, killing in one strike. If I protect it by my side, it would be burying its talent. Although little gold is good, it hasn't grown. If I want to use my soul to drive the sword, I need to find another protector spirit beast. I have no choice. After the energy in his body recovered, Zongshu continued to rest for a day. On the 3rd day, he finally felt refreshed. The talisman formation he needed was finally drawn. Pretty much instantly, he placed out an incense table and lit up 2 white candles to make a simple spell altar. He also pasted several yellow talismans onto the table. Zongshu's face turned serious as he stood in the middle of the formation. He took out the silver beast crystal that he had exchanged from Zhuren not long ago. The bear spirit beast within was a grade 5 protector spirit beast. However, in truth, it was above grade 6, far from what an out-of-body realm spirit master could suppress. The reason why he had such confidence today was because in his last life, Zhongsho had seen a talisman formation in the library. It could temporarily seal a portion of the spirit beast's strength and force it down a grade. However, the process of subduing it was still dangerous. If it was before he got the Black Wave Sword, Zhongsho definitely wouldn't take the risk. However, at this moment, he didn't hesitate to toss the beast crystal in front of the talisman. While it was still in midair, 2 talismans were lit up by the candles and chased after it. A ball of fire instantly wrapped up the beast crystal. In the next moment, green smoke seeped out. After it formed, it was a 60-foot giant bear that appeared in front of Zhongsho. Luckily, his room was wide enough, made of giant wood, 80 feet tall, which was why the roof didn't burst open. Chapter 106. A ball of fire instantly wrapped up the beast crystal. In the next moment, green smoke seeped out. When it formed, it was a 60-foot tall giant bear that appeared in front of Zhongsho. Luckily, his room was wide enough, made of giant wood. The beams were 80 feet tall, which was why the roof didn't burst open. Its body was silver, and its eyes were blood red. After looking at Zhongsho, it roared out. Zhongsho pounced forward. Who knows if it was an illusion, but although it was a soul body, every step it took seemed to cause the ground to shake. Back off! Zhongsho was unfazed, throwing out the 2 talismans in his hand. They turned into 2 balls of green and blue flames, striking towards the 2 arms of the bear. That giant silver bear also seemed to have been electrocuted. It immediately leaned back and retracted its hands. Zhongsho used his hands to form a seal and chanted. Just as the giant silver bear was about to pounce once more, he hollered coldly. Talisman chain 1,000 coil, bind it. 10 silver talisman chains instantly rose up from the formation, directly wrapping around the body of the giant bear. However, the giant bear's body continued to struggle, trying to stand up like a human. The huge strength actually caused the chains to break one by one. Zhongsho didn't panic, taking out another talisman, directly activating it, turning into a yellow light that charged into the sky. Stone gathering talisman, suppress. In an instant, traces of earth-type spiritual energy gathered from all directions. Slowly, a giant stone was drawn, pressing down on the body of the giant bear. The giant stone grew bigger and bigger. At the start, the silver bear was still able to resist, but slowly, it couldn't take it anymore. It was pulled by the talisman chains, its entire body crawling on the ground. The red glow in its eyes became even thicker. Suddenly, a light flashed, and a red mark appeared in the middle of its forehead. A ball of silver light was spat out from within, striking towards the altar that was inches away. Zhongsho's eyes were sharp, and his hands were quick. With a thought, the Black Wave Sword flew over, only to hear a light kung sound as the hiltless spiritual sword was actually shaken and flew back. After the silver light shuddered, it continued onward without any signs of slowing down. However, just as he reached the incense burner table, he was stopped by an invisible wave and was suspended in midair. A yellow paper talisman was pasted on the incense table. It was burning without any fire. The silvery light finally revealed itself. It was actually a small silver awl with a cold glint flickering on its tip. This mountain-breaking bear has indeed mutated. I've already used this spiritual formation to prevent it from coming into contact with the earth veins below, so it won't be able to use the earth chi. Then, he used the talisman chains to trap him and the stone talisman to suppress him. Yet, he still had the strength to fight back. Zhuren said that this item and the 2 human pinnacle pills were worth the same as the broken blade sword. He is a little humble. Zhongsho didn't dare to be careless. Looking at the giant bear that was inches away from him, he roared again and bared his fangs. That small silver all's momentum became stronger and stronger, causing ripples in front of his body. He quickly formed a sword seal and waved it. It caused the black wave sword to charge down once more, forcefully stabbing into the blood mark at the center of the silver bear's forehead. In the next instance, there was a furious roar. The entire room seemed to be shaking. The silver bear was still unwilling to be controlled, like only now did it realize that it was a soul body. Its entire body turned into a ball of green smoke and rose up, trying to scatter in all directions to break away from the chains and the giant stone above its head. When Zhongsho saw the situation, he laughed instead, his eyes filled with cold disdain. "Bastard, since I want to subdue you, how can I not be prepared for this? You are strong, but you are too stupid. However, that's good, it suits me." He stepped on the ground, and another talisman burned on the incense table. A ball of lightning was formed in the air. Who knows if it was because of the lightning phoenix mark in Zhongsho's soul. The silver lightning had a slight purple intent. Following the talisman chains, it spread all around. It caused the ball of green smoke within the formation to toss and turn. A moment later, it formed up once more. Not only was it much weaker, but its body also seemed to have shrunk. Like a trapped beast that was struggling to escape, it looked towards the spell altar with a hateful gaze. Zhongsho didn't care, jumping up and arriving in front of the silver bear. He wasn't afraid of the beast's counterattack, pointing at the center of the silver bear's brows, below the wave-breaking sword. Among the protector beasts beside him, be it Little Gold or the Rising Moon Lion, they all had physical bodies. This was the first time he had subdued a spirit beast. Luckily, he had seen many in his last life. Not only in real life, but he had witnessed it tens of times. In the God Emperor game, he had even personally tried it. He used a lightning-toothed sword to slice open his wrist. Fresh red blood instantly spurted out. However, this was only one of the materials. Zhongsho took out a small bottle and opened it. Numerous jade green and extremely cold liquid flowed out. The latter was directly refined from numerous beast spirit stones, using the essence and some special herbs to refine it into a spirit liquid. Naturally, Zhongsho didn't have the time to refine it. However, this thing was really common and could be bought in any city. What Zhongsho was using now was grade 4 spirit liquid, the highest grade that could be bought in Cloud Saint City. When it mixed with Zhongsho's blood, the color became even weirder, green with a tinge of red. However, it was restricted by a certain power as it seeped into the silver bear's brows. In just a moment, a small talisman formation was drawn, similar to when he subdued Little Gold. Only the last few strokes weren't completed. Beads of sweat seeped out from Zhongsho's face. He felt that the intent of the spirit beast was extremely violent, like a wave crashing onto the shore. It resisted with all its might, wanting to totally shatter this soul-controlling talisman. Laughing coldly, Zhongsho's empty left hand grabbed a grade 4 spirit stone from his sleeves. Energy swallowing. That crystal instantly exploded, turning into a ball of dust in Zhongsho's hand. The right hand fingertip that was on the silver bear's brows suddenly shone with a blood-colored glow. Along with the last talisman being drawn, the red color in the eyes of the mountain-breaking silver bear instantly dimmed. Even its expression seemed to have become much more tamed. If it was a normal spirit beast, he would have subdued it and made it his protector spirit beast. From then on, it would live and die with the spirit master. However, Zhongsho could still feel that the giant bear in front of him still had the intent to resist. The violent hatred still didn't disappear. After the blood-colored talisman was drawn, it continued to expand and spread all over its body. It caused the entire body of the mountain-breaking silver bear to be dyed in a layer of red. A full 8 hours later, Zhongsho panted as he found a chair nearby to sit down. Subduing this protector spirit beast was really dangerous. Other things weren't much. Under such a well-prepared situation, he didn't need to worry about what this grade 5 spirit beast could do to him. It was rare for him to be so focused for a few hours. A moment of distraction would cause the talisman formation that was being drawn to collapse. The amount of mental energy he consumed was even several times more than 3 days ago. That day was painful, but it wasn't as painful as today. He was exhausted, his soul was dry, and he was like a lamp that was about to run out of oil. However, at this moment, the giant bear in front of him that was originally 60 feet tall had shrunk to 20 feet tall. Even if it stood up, it wouldn't touch the roof. Although it didn't have the aura from before, its expression became peaceful and it didn't resist Zhong Shou's orders anymore. However, the amount of soul power this beast needed from him was also huge. Even if he forcefully suppressed it to grade 4, it was still the same as the rising moon lion and little gold combined. Along with the physical presence of the latter two, which he couldn't break his connection with, these 3 protector spirit beasts were already close to their limit. Even with the energy swallowing technique, swallowing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to replenish their consumption, they still couldn't take it. This mountain-breaking bear was born with a silver eye. Although it can't truly open it, it can already pierce through gold and break stone. In the future, I can just call it Little Monster. Casually giving this silver bear a name, Zhong Shou recalled that the rising moon lion that was following his orders to hide outside of the city didn't have a name yet. Although there weren't many rising moon lions, there were still some in the world. It wasn't good to name his protector spirit beast. After grade 6, beasts would have their own unique true names and their lives would be at stake. The name Rising Moon Lion wasn't suitable. That Rising Moon Lion's comprehension is not bad, and it has some intelligence. In the future, its achievements won't just stop at this. It can be called Little Intelligence. He didn't realize that his naming style was no different from those kids. On the contrary, Zhong Shou was delighted and felt that it was really appropriate. Coincidentally, when he gave it a name, he felt that his soul and intent had crossed 20 miles and was connected to the rising moon lying outside of the city. This was the spiritual connection between his spirit master and himself. Originally, with his current out-of-body realm, he could at most reach 10 miles. Only if one of them had a particularly strong will and cooperated with the other would they be able to overcome this restriction. Oh, I found a treasure outside of the city that is similar to the 7 spirit ring. There are also 2 women that seem really fierce. Little Intelligence, you aren't their match. Do you want me to head out of the city to take a look? Zhong Shou closed his eyes for a moment before smiling. A beast that just entered grade 4 and hasn't even seen many spiritual artifacts. How would it know what a treasure is? There are many experts in the world, and Cloud Saint City is where a martial saint was born. Every year, numerous martial artists come here to pay their respects. It is normal to meet 2 slightly stronger women outside of the city. In his heart, he was slightly curious. Just the fact that it was similar to the 7 spirit ring was worth him going over to take a look. Unfortunately, at this moment, he was already exhausted and found it difficult to even stand up. He was totally unable to leave the city. Speaking of women, Zhong Shou thought about Xianyuan Yiren and Li Yunyang. Who knows why, but since the 2 of them left 3 days ago, there were no signs of them. Did they suddenly regret and go back? If that was the case, then it would be for the best. His head was really heavy, and he couldn't think about anything. Zhong Shou waved his hand and ordered the demon Eye Silver Bear to turn into a ball of smoke and enter his sleeves. Then he lost his consciousness and fell into a deep sleep. Chapter 107. Who knows how long had passed before Zhong Shou woke up in a daze. Immediately, he felt a pain in his right wrist. Raising it in front of his face, it was healing and stopping the bleeding. However, the reddish-brown mark was still shocking. Zhong Shou sighed. He was used to bleeding now. If it wasn't for his marrow training and his vital energy being strong, he would have a blood deficiency sooner or later. The talisman ink used by spirit masters was best with their own blood and was the most effective. However, it wasn't like there weren't any other things that could replace it. There were even tens of things that were more effective than it. Unfortunately, he didn't have any of them by his side. Looking out of the window, he didn't need to look to know that it was noon of the second day. A moment later, Zhong Shou was startled. This spiritual energy movement is a little weird. There seems to be someone cultivating or using a spiritual formation nearby. This place seems to be just next door. Zhong Shou's brows furrowed. The only one who stayed beside his room was Xianyuan Yiren. A few days ago, she forcefully moved in, not caring whether he agreed or not. She just placed all her luggage in. However, recently she wasn't here for a few days, so he nearly forgot about this matter. Who knows what cultivation method this girl is cultivating? Is it the fire moon dark art or the Emine fire essence technique? It's so weird. Alright, I heard that the pill fountain sect passed down a secret technique, the mysterious moonwood brilliance technique. It was said that if one cultivated both spirit and martial arts, using this technique to refine pills, one would have a 70% success rate. However, wasn't this cultivation method proven to have flaws, and no one cultivated it anymore? Zhongsho shook his head and directly walked out of the door. However, just as he was about to step out of the door, the corner of his eyes saw a hole in the wall. It was the hole that he had made a few days ago with the lightning tooth sword. Although he ordered the servants in the courtyard to clean it up, the hole in the wall hadn't been fixed. Struggling in his heart, Zhongsho hesitated for a moment. In the end, he couldn't suppress the curiosity in his heart and quietly walked in front of the hole. He thought to himself, "Miss Erin, please don't blame me. It's not that I, Zhongsho, want to peek at your cultivation. I'm just worried." Although the power of the mystic moonwood brilliance technique was incomparably tyrannical, there was a huge flaw in the later stages. More than 10 of the most talented disciples of the Pill Fountain sect had all fallen to it. He had already died before reaching the immortal martial realm. This directly led to the decline of the Elixir Fountain sect in the future. From 7th place to 14th place out of the 19 spiritual palaces. It was okay if he didn't see it, but if this Xianyuan Erin broke off the engagement with him, he wouldn't bother about it. But now that the other party had come looking for him, he couldn't just sit back and watch. Although this woman's brain was flooded with water, saying that she would insist on some benevolence and righteousness and refuse to annul the engagement, it gave him a headache. However, in his heart, he was still happy for Xianyuan Erin. Not to mention this incomparably bloody era. There were not many people who were so righteous, even in the flourishing age of etiquette and music established by the Divine Emperor. As a woman, it was even rarer. He drew his eyes close to the hole and saw a ball of spiritual light flickering, only to see that near the wooden bed, a red and green pill was hanging in the air. It was this item that was swallowing large amounts of spiritual energy and was also the source of all the spiritual energy fluctuations in this area. So, it is an external pill. I was wondering how this girl broke through to the Xiantian realm at 16. She also reached the 3rd meridian of the Earth Chakra realm, even stronger than that Zhao Yanran. How can there be so many talents in this world? Zhongsho shook his head. However, he could see that this Xianyuan Erin's talent was not bad and was only half a step away from the true Xiantian realm. The last few times he looked at this girl, he only felt that her yang energy was surging and her foundations were extremely firm. She didn't need much time and didn't need to borrow the help of the external pill. This pill could also become one of the spiritual artifacts that she carried with her. However, when he looked closely at this half-red, half-green pill, the breathing patterns as well as the spiritual patterns that occasionally flashed on it, Zhongsho couldn't help but laugh bitterly. It really is the mysterious moonwood brilliance technique. Is this girl one of the fallen geniuses of the Pill Fountain sect? She has obviously entered the basics of this technique and can be considered a small achievement. This is going to be problematic. Sighing, Zhongsho looked at the ground and at the person sitting there. Then, his entire body froze up like a statue. It was a young girl of about 16 years old sitting cross-legged on the bed. Her body had already grown up, her skin was white as snow, smoother and more beautiful than the most exquisite porcelain. Her breasts were round and perky, her waist was thin like a willow. Below, one could see the deep ravine. Her body was much better than what he had seen before. Zhongsho only felt his mouth dry up, the blood in his stomach boiling. He thought to himself why this Xianyuan Erin didn't wear clothes when she cultivated. Then he thought back to the mysterious moonwood brilliance technique. When she cultivated, the fire around her body would be extremely strong, and there was nothing that it couldn't burn. All of his clothes would be burned away. Then, Xinyuan Irin seemed to have sensed something, opening her eyes and looking over. She was startled at first, but then she realized that it was Zhong Shou who was peeping. Her beautiful eyes were filled with embarrassment and rage. Her face flushed red, but she couldn't say anything. Her eyes dodged, not daring to look over. Zhong Shaoxin groaned in his heart. After keeping silent for a moment, he took a few steps back. Then, he didn't even turn his head as he ran out of the door in a haggard manner. Only when he reached the courtyard at the side did he calm down. Then, he felt a heart-piercing pain. Sigh. Tanxiu have a good reputation. Who knew that it would be ruined today? Who knows what Xinyuan Irin's reaction would be? The key was that the hole in the wall was too coincidental. If it was any girl, they would think that he purposely opened it to peep at her. Did he have to explain to her that he was worried that she would be in danger when cultivating the mysterious moon wood brilliance technique, which was why he took a look? Not to mention whether or not she believed him. But just how did he know about the flaws of the mysterious moon wood brilliance technique? Actually, if Xinyuan Irin grabbed him and beat him up, then it was okay. What he was afraid of was that this woman, since she placed so much emphasis on loyalty, her personality would be really conservative. How weird. In my last life, I had many experiences with girls. Why did I have to feel so guilty towards this girl who hasn't grown up? I only took a look at her body and didn't do anything. However, if I break off the engagement, who knows who will be lucky enough to marry her in the future. Such a good girl, 1 in 10,000. Thinking about that, for some reason, Zhong Shou felt uncomfortable in his chest, but he suppressed it. I have to think of a way to explain this matter to Xinyuan Irin. Should I apologize in person? However, wouldn't it be better if I could act like nothing happened? Thinking about it for a moment, he had no idea. Zhong Shou decided to train his sword in the front courtyard, one hand holding the lightning tooth sword, still using those basic sword techniques, only there were many more movements. His strength greatly increased, his body was more flexible, and his speed was faster. Naturally, his sword technique also changed. And the biggest difference was that there was an additional black wave sword beside him at this moment. Along with his nimble body, it continued to spin around for him. To be able to use his mind to drive the sword was one thing. However, it was another matter to perfectly match his own swordsmanship with the spirit sword thought method. The reason why people who cultivated in both spirit and martial arts could be stronger than people of the same grade was because of the combination of martial arts and spiritual techniques. Pretty much every sword that stabbed out, the sword body would shine with a dim lightning glow. It brought with it mist and mirage energy, like it had turned into a few swords, drifting about unpredictably. This wasn't a spiritual technique, and it wasn't completely caused by the spiritual technique. When a martial artist cultivated to the mythic master realm, their true chi would be strong, and they would have their own specialties. He could already use some unique secret arts to trigger some changes in his spirit energy. For example, Yin Yang could control fire, and when Zhao Yanran exploded, her true chi could freeze 1,000 feet of land. Up until now, he had only been cultivating the most basic chi refinement technique. However, due to his body having both the Sky Fox and Lightning Phoenix marks, he was born with the ability to use lightning and illusionary techniques. He didn't even need to control them himself. I do need to choose a chi cultivation method to cultivate. Not only do I need to prepare for Xiantian. When I use my strength, it is just too hard to control. Before this, Zhong Shou had a dual meridian body. Even if he had a martial arts treasury in his head, he could only temporarily delay it. However, at this moment, pretty much every sword that he stabbed out would cause some damage to the lightning tooth sword. The control of the spiral energy was far more difficult than he had expected. It far exceeded the control of basic chi cultivation methods. The only path he could take now was to create his own. If he only had the spiral meridians in his body, then he didn't need to worry. The problem was that his lightning controlling ability and Sky Fox illusionary technique had to be considered. There was also the mysterious human race bloodline that hadn't awakened yet. He also needed to leave some room for change. This would test his martial arts foundations. Even the cultivation methods before Xiantian couldn't be formed in a short time. 3 days of not moving his muscles and bones. At this moment, his body was slowly heating up. Vital energy was circulating and flowing through his limbs and bones. Zhongsho slowly cleared his mind of all distracting thoughts. Although the lightning tooth sword was crying out continuously, he still felt carefree. Slowly, he didn't restrict himself to those basic sword techniques. He also unknowingly used some of the exquisite sword techniques that he trained in his last life. It caused sword energy to sweep across this flat land, and blade shadows filled the air. Numerous leaves were sliced down. Those broken branches were sliced into pieces before they even landed on the ground. When the last sword stabbed out, Zhongsho's body suddenly stood up straight. It was like he didn't exist in this world. The sword in his hand seemed to have stabbed out from the void, bringing with it a deep sense of death. It was as if there was an extremely cold and gloomy river flowing around him. Zhongsho's gaze was totally emotionless, following which he came back to his senses. In front of him, 100 feet away, a pine tree had already withered. The fallen leaves beneath his feet also instantly turned yellow and withered. Just as he was laughing bitterly, Zhongsho suddenly felt something and looked to his right, only to see Yin Yang taking a cold breath. His face was startled as he muttered, "Sword energy, sword intent, using the spirit to drive the sword. Did I see it wrongly? Am I, Yin Yang, still in a dream?" Chapter 108. So, it is Uncle Yin. Zhongsho heaved a sigh of relief, waving his sleeves and causing several talismans to fly out. They instantly turned into a ball of flame and spread all about. In just a moment, all the dead leaves on the ground were burned up. There was also a portion that hit the pine tree. Tongues of fire danced and burned fiercely. This action wasn't to cover his tracks, but to chase away the death energy that was attracted by his martial path intent. If he didn't use the flames of the sun to burn it out, within 3 days, all the plants and living beings within 1,000 feet would die. His Styx River Death Sword had great battle records in his last life, causing the disciples of the various sects of the Cloud World to avoid it. In the end, as he knew that he had killed too many people, when he used the sword, there was no life, so he sealed it and forgot about it. He chose another sword path that merged hundreds of schools, which was even more difficult. Just now, he unknowingly used it. Such a sword technique used the death energy of heaven and earth to turn into the Styx River Death Sword. It harvested life, pretty much unsolvable, like the god of death, close to the evil path. If it was possible, Zhongsho would rather not use this sword technique than not let others know about it. Luckily, the person watching from the side was Yin Yang. He wasn't afraid that others would learn it, but this sword technique was dangerous even if one just watched from the side. Only Yin Yang, who had trained hard for tens of years under the restrictions, was strong enough to not be affected by his sword intent. After dealing with the dead trees and leaves, Yin Yang finally came back to his senses, his eyes fixed on Zhongsho. Using your mind to control the sword, has the prince really reached the out-of-body realm? Sword energy seeping out, pretty much comparable to Xiantian. Also, this sword technique, today, I finally understand why Zhao Yanran wanted to see if the sun knew the sword intent. As expected, your sword path is one with the spirit. Uncle Yin, I've only opened up 7 meridians and am far from the sword intent level. It is still just sword rhythm. At most, it is slightly better than normal people. Seeing that Yin Yang's expression didn't change, Zhongsho smiled helplessly, too lazy to explain. As for this out-of-body realm, I have indeed proven it. Did Chu Shui not mention it to you these few days? She did mention it. She also mentioned that you once used your soul to kill a Xiantian. Only Yin Yang didn't dare to believe it. Yin Yang nodded his head, a weird expression flashing across his eyes. Even when I personally saw it today, I still thought that I was dreaming. The Crown Prince's swordsmanship was something he had never seen or heard of before. Just now, Yin Yang even had a feeling that he was about to die. Therefore, he knew that if he were to face the tip of this sword, he would definitely die. What a pity if the ruler was still here. Who knows how happy he would be. Seeing that yin yang of yin yangs, zong shou, he thought to himself that if his father was still here, would he treat him as a demon that took over his son's body and kill him? Whether or not he would be happy, that was even more uncertain. His eyes swept around, following which he looked around. Apart from the leaves and pine trees that he used talismans to burn, there were many fire marks. His heart couldn't help but move. Uncle Ian is comprehending blade strength. When Yin Yang heard that, he didn't immerse himself in reminiscing, his brow furrowing. That's right. He suddenly pulled out his blade and slashed at the air. Within 300 feet, the flames were extremely strong and spread out. Zhongsho only felt that the area around him suddenly became hot, but he didn't react at all as he looked at the blade image that Yin Yang slashed out. Invading like fire, it was indeed filled with charm. My body has a fire nature, and I cultivate an ancient secret technique, the heaven-burning extreme flame blade, which is why my martial path intent is like a flame charging. After 3 months, the prince demonstrated the great blazing sun fist and taught me the mysteries of the martial path. A few days ago, I reached the peak of my blade rhythm. However, as he said that, Yin Yang waved his blade once more. That sweeping flame once again swept outwards. However, this time the strength of the flame decreased. That snow-bright blade image also didn't have the intimidating aura from before. Yin Yang laughed bitterly. I was prepared to work harder to comprehend the strength of this blade technique, but I was unable to comprehend it and had no idea. In the past, Master said that my talent was shocking and that in the future, I would be the top of the blade path. The ruler also said that in the future, Yin Yang would enter the Ascended Realm. However, looking at it today, Yin Yang, am just a normal person. Zhongsho sucked in a cold breath when he heard that. How long had it been since Yin Yang entered the 8 Meridian Martial Master Realm? At this stage, he had just reached the threshold of comprehending the martial path intent. No wonder when he was in the tea house, he said that as long as he had a period of time, he wouldn't need to fear Rin Qianshou. He did have the confidence. No wonder Zhong Weiran didn't hand his son over to those Xiantian experts or other trusted people. Instead, he handed him to Yin Yang, not only because of his spirit race body, but also because of his unparalleled martial path talent. After staying in Pill Spirit Mountain for 5 to 6 years, once Yin Yang was able to use his own strength to break through his restrictions, he would be able to soar into the heavens. At that time, even if he hadn't finished cultivating with just Yin Yang's strength, he would be able to protect him. Before this, he knew that Yin Yang's improvement would be extremely quick, even surpassing him. However, he didn't expect it to be so quick. Sizing up Yin Yang with a weird expression, Zhongsho took in a deep breath before casually waving the lightning tooth sword to the side. People say that clouds are unpredictable. Actually, flames are similar, able to gather and disperse. If it is scattered, it can sweep 1,000 miles. If it is gathered, it can smelt gold and iron. Uncle Ian, you have already comprehended it, so I won't repeat it. I will only point out where you are lacking. Also, although the strength of the martial path is within the range of the martial path intent, it is different from the rhythm, intent, soul, and spirit. That sword shadow circled around. The flames all around swept over and gathered at the tip of Zhongsho's sword. Then, like a flame tongue jumping, it suddenly crossed 100 feet of space until it was right in front of Yin Yang's eyes. When Yin Yang came to his senses, the tip of the lightning tooth sword was just an inch away from his brow. The tip of the sword shone with a white light, extremely hot. What was more shocking was that the current Zhongsho seemed to have merged into the flames. Along with the flames that covered the sky, it spread over and wanted to burn him to ashes. An understanding rose up in his heart. This was the strength of the fire sword. Zhongsho actually used the sword rhythm level to reach the effect of strength. Uncle Ian, do you understand now? You are only using the knife to control the fire and can't borrow the strength of the fire. Actually, everything in the world can enter strength. Every blade of grass, every tree, the weather changes, even one's identity and power can be displayed in strength. People who train it to the peak can even go up against experts who are connected to the gods in the martial path. Yin Yang was originally thinking about it carefully. However, when he heard the last sentence, he didn't believe it. Connected to the gods in the martial path, those were all experts above the celestial martial realm. How could this strength go up against them? Zhongshu smiled and didn't explain anymore. At this moment, he couldn't say that in the future he had heard of an emperor who controlled 36 small worlds. He used the billions of living beings in his country and tens of millions of troops to enter strength. He killed a spiritual grandmaster who was at the entrance of the celestial martial realm with one sword. At that time, the cloud world was already connected to many other worlds, which was why they knew about the secrets of other worlds. It wasn't as closed off as it was now. Yin Yang was still in deep thought with his eyes closed. Who knows how long passed before he sighed. Thank you, Prince, for your guidance. Although Yin Yang can't comprehend it, I know where the path is. I just have to directly walk over. Zhongshu nodded his head slightly. He didn't expect his sword to be able to let Yin Yang instantly comprehend it. In the end, he needed to comprehend it before it could truly become something of his. However, since he had already helped him today, why not help him all the way to the west? Yin Yang had already comprehended the knife rhythm and had some understanding of strength. If he was able to see a sword intent of the same nature, he would be able to improve further. The lightning-toothed sword in his hand changed once more. It turned from a pale white to a blazing white. Like even the sword body was starting to burn. Yin Yang's expression changed, and he hurriedly concentrated, looking carefully. Coincidentally, at this moment, Chu Shui's voice spread into his ears. Young master, Uncle Lin, there are people in front. It looks like the city lord manor. Zhongshu was slightly startled as he looked over, only to see Chu Shui swiftly running over. However, her body was covered in bird feathers. There were even a few strands of hair on her face. He couldn't help but burst out laughing. Speaking of which, Chu Shui was in such a state because of him. The so-called bird catching was to catch 72 different types of birds each day and place them within 200 feet, not allowing a single one to escape. With Chu Shui's speed, it seemed simple, but it was actually really complicated and difficult. Every day, she would add 4 more, which was the best way to train her battle instincts. These birds all had their own abilities to help them escape and fly. It could also help Chu Shui grasp methods to deal with spells. Yin Yang really wanted to kill someone. Just as he was comprehending something, he was interrupted. He couldn't help but stare over viciously. Chu Shui also stopped breathing, instinctively feeling that the situation wasn't good. She only felt that Yin Yang's gaze was suddenly really fierce. Zhongshu also had a smile that wasn't a smile, filled with bad intentions. You want to slack off again? Even if someone from the city lore manor comes, just let the servants report. Why did you run over here? Have those sparrows all flown away? The courtyard that Cloud Saint City arranged for them was not small. There were 4 to 5 servants, but they usually stayed in the front courtyard and didn't appear. It was like they didn't want to have anything to do with them. Seeing that Chu Shui's face didn't even turn red, only looking around in embarrassment. She raised her head to look at the sky, using her fingernails to scratch her face. Zhongshu instantly smiled and walked to the front. The person who came was a Xiantian master, close to 60 years old, with a muscular body. He didn't enter the hall, just waiting at the door. When Zhongshu arrived, he bowed respectfully, letting the servant beside him carry out a few wooden plates. I heard that the prince ordered some things from the weapon shop of my Cloud Saint City. I was ordered by the city lord to bring them over on behalf of the prince. Samurai glanced at the wooden plates. They were the external bone parts that he had ordered, as well as a full 50 cloud pattern talisman knives that were crafted by spirit blacksmiths. His eyes couldn't help but squint. In the next moment, he heard this person say calmly, "We acted on our own accord. Please don't blame the prince." Apart from that, The city lord also has something to tell the prince. Our Cloud Saint city has great scenery and is always peaceful. It is a great place to enjoy the scenery. If the prince likes it, why not stay for a few days? After he finished, he bowed and brought the few people behind him and left. Chapter 109. Shu Shui didn't know what was going on, holding the few wooden plates as she looked at the backs of those few people. Weird. Why do they have to send these things to us? Did the Yuanbing house open by their Cloud Saint City Lord? Zhongshu laughed, but didn't reply. He grabbed a cloud pattern flying knife and played with it in his hand. The material of this knife was no weaker than the lightning tooth sword. Cloud pattern talismans were carved on it, and as long as it was slightly activated, a mist would appear. The ability of the cloud, shocking God, destroying sword intent, was much stronger than the willow leaf flying knives he used before. It was still as thin as a cicada's wing, but it was much sharper. However, the current Zhongshu wasn't focused on the knife in his hand. Instead, he was coldly looking at a building across the street. This was the city Lord Manor. A 50-foot tall stone wall separated the spacious courtyard from the outside. On the right, there was a tall building, taller than the stone wall. 10,000 feet away, looking out from here, one could see two people on it. What other reason can there be? They sent the things I ordered over so naturally. They want us to leave quickly. Chushua let out an ah, her face filled with confusion. Just now, that person obviously wanted them to stay for a few more days. However, that person's attitude towards them was like he was facing a god of plague, which made one really unhappy. Yin Yang's face was dark and sunken, his expression extremely ugly. Zhongshu squinted his eyes and smiled. Cloud Saint City's scenery was great, and it was always peaceful. It was the best place to enjoy the scenery. What he meant was that he didn't want to be dragged into this storm. Once something unexpected happened, it would go from being peaceful to being in trouble. No matter how good the scenery was, no one would come here to enjoy the scenery. He was open-minded and understood the difficulties of the Cloud Saint City Lord. If it was him, he would most probably do the same. However, he would feel slightly uncomfortable in his heart. Rushing him away without even meeting him was a little too much. With a self-deprecating laugh, Zhongshu no longer looked at the pavilion and walked back inside. Actually, even without the city lord's reminder, he was already prepared to leave. It was just that he was 2 days early. It would be a good thing if he could get his hands on these cloud pattern flying knives and external bone parts earlier. He thought to himself that these peaceful and comfortable days would not last long. He couldn't even find a quiet place to settle down. In order to survive in this world, others were ultimately unreliable. Only one's own strength, swordsmanship, and chanting were the foundation of one's existence. We can't be careless. Lianxing, this is the Gantia Mountain Prince? 10,000 feet away, on top of a 5-story building. An old man in a brocade robe was leaning against the railing and watching. This person's face was red as dates, but his expression was calm. His right arm was muscular, but his left arm was as dry as wood. His slightly withered eyes flashed with a curious look. From here, he could see the thin youth on the other side of the street beyond the stone wall. To be able to sense our presence, this person's intuition is quite sharp. He doesn't look like someone who has never practiced martial arts. This prince is indeed a little special. However, I sent people to observe him for several days and didn't notice any signs of him practicing martial arts. He also doesn't look like he has trained his soul. If he is skilled in the martial path and chanting, there should be some clues on his body. However, Master, you also saw that he doesn't have any martial artist aura at all. He also doesn't have any spiritual sense seeping out. These words came from behind the old man in the brocade robe. A middle-aged man whose face was filled with wrinkles, looking like a butler, was standing with his hands by his side. He was dressed in a black robe, and one couldn't see anything special about him. However, when he raised his head, his eyes were as sharp as an eagle's. The old man frowned. Although that is the case, I still feel a little uneasy. Sir Lei Dong instructed us to take care of him and try our best to form a good relationship with him. In the end, not only did I not follow his instructions, but I also chased him away. The face of the butler, known as Lianqing, changed, and he was a little helpless. Master wasn't willing to do this. Due to the pressure from many sides, we had no choice but to do so. Sir Lei Dong has always been a casual person. After he ordered his subordinates to say those words, he didn't appear for a long time, which is really suspicious. In my opinion, Master Lei Dong might have already forgotten about this matter. This person is in a whirlpool and is involved in the battle between the Donglin sects. It is said that he has some connection with the Eight-Tail sect of the Sky Fox race. It isn't something that our Cloud Saint city can interfere in. A dual meridian trash isn't worth our city taking on too much responsibility for him and fighting with those few people. Letting him leave is the best way. The old man hesitated. After a short while, he sighed, I can only let you down. However, before this person leaves, he will definitely die. However, before he leaves, I still have to meet him and send him off. I don't want to have anything to do with this person, but I also don't want to become enemies because of this. There must be a reason why Sir Lei Dong thinks so highly of this person. Prepare some gifts and bring them over. Lianqing was startled and raised his head, only to see that the old man's face had calmed down. His tone and expression were not to be doubted. He could only keep his words and not try to persuade him. Lianqing will follow your orders. This will be arranged, but the size of the gifts. That old man was in deep thought and didn't reply. Lianqing bowed slightly and directly retreated downstairs. He knew what this old master wanted. It didn't need to be expensive, just normal gifts would do. Returning to the courtyard, Chu Shui had already calmed down. Although she was furious before, thinking about it now, this was their territory after all. There was no danger and she had stayed here for over 10 days. So what was there to be unsatisfied about? She couldn't always let others shield her from the wind and rain. Yin Yang was the same, but he was much calmer. It was obvious that he had predicted this beforehand. I heard that Cloud Saint City Lord Su Jingyuan was famous in his early years. His personality was fiery, and he did things viciously. He reached the martial ancestor realm at 35 and pretty much unified 3,000 miles of land around Cloud Saint City. However, he was injured by others, and it was hard to heal, so he restrained his personality. He did things like a woman, dragging things out. He was kind to others and didn't make enemies with others. It was like that for tens of years. It was said that there were many times when he was forced into a corner and didn't dare to fight back. He relied on his relationship with those hidden sects to barely protect this city. It seems like it is getting worse and worse. Zhong Shou was a little shocked. Who knew that this Cloud Saint City Lord would have such a glorious time? A radius of 4,000 miles was enough to span several provinces. As for Yin Yang's last few sentences, he didn't think much of it. How could the personality of a lion be so easily suppressed? Su Jingyuan did things like that because he was helpless. However, this matter had nothing to do with him. Moreover, it was already late, so if he wanted to leave, he could only leave tomorrow. Once again entering his room, he couldn't help but glance at the hole in the wall. The hole wasn't blocked, and the situation in the room beside could still be seen. Zhong Shou anxiously turned his head. He doesn't seem to be here. Did he leave from the back door? After being filled with doubt for a moment, Zhong Shou didn't bother anymore and started to assemble those parts. The wind-traveling spirit bone from before only had legs. As for the set he was custom-made, it included the upper arm. It was also made from grade 3 cloud whale bones, but the material was different. One was made from the ribs, the other from the wings that carried the weight of the cloud whale and allowed it to fly in the air. In terms of toughness, it was at least 3 times stronger. There were also many lightning patterns carved on it. The arms and joints were made from metal, shining with a cold glow. It made this set of external bones even stronger. The hands were the same, similar to sword claws. The 5 fingers could be wrapped within. Each finger sword was sharp and tough, no weaker than the lightning tooth. The runes carved on the outside were made from a material known as blood spirit copper. It was embedded into the bones, making the runes harder to damage and harder to repair. Zhong Shou spent an hour to assemble one set. After wearing it, he could feel that this set of external bones was resonating with the lightning phoenix talisman on his body. He fiercely punched out and crushed the only remaining sandalwood chair in his room. Samuraim's eyes lit up as he started to calculate his strength. Around 9,500 kilograms. My strength is around 3,600 kilograms. This set of external bones provides a full 5,900 kilograms of strength, close to the 10,000 kilograms of strength of a 9-meridian mythic master. Zhongsho was shocked. The set of new external bones he assembled was called lightning travel. It was different from wind travel, which used wind power to move, while lightning travel used electricity to move. Both of them had the characteristic of being swift. However, in this aspect, the lightning travel spirit bone was far above wind travel, even exceeding cloud stepping foals. Its combat ability wasn't weak either. Not only could the 5-finger sword claws work, but the left and right arms had a space to hide swords. If one had enough soul power, they could even use lightning to injure people. However, in his last life, this lightning travel spirit bone could at most provide 5,000 kilograms of strength. Most probably the cloud whale bones of this era weren't domesticated. Wild items are naturally tougher. Zhongsho was excited, his body suddenly moving about in the room, using this bone to try out his fist techniques. It wasn't the Foundation Spirit Fountain nor the 5-wheel Enlightened King Fist. Instead, it was extremely sharp, 10 sword claws bringing with them a cold light. As swift as a tiger, as fierce as a leopard. However, a moment later, Zhongsho's interest waned. This external bone is strong, but when I wear it, the fist techniques I use won't be as nimble as a human body. If I wear it at battle, my combat strength will drop by 2 levels. No wonder my last life, apart from those peak external bones that were made by artifact blacksmiths, all the other experts treated them like trash. Looking into his body, he realized that in this half a day, he had practiced a round of the sword and a set of fist techniques. However, the essence of the lightning phoenix egg that he had absorbed was too little. Only a small amount was truly absorbed by his blood, flesh, and skin. If he wanted to break through, he would need at least a few months. Shaking his head slightly, Zhongsho sat on his bed, taking out a cloud pattern flying knife and placing it in his palm. His right hand slightly exerted strength, and the flying knife rose up like a spiritual artifact, hanging half an inch above Zhongsho's palm. Chapter 110. In the morning of the second day, Chu Shui brought out the 18 cloud stepping foals she raised in the stables. Zhongsho used these few days of free time to fix up the carriage. He added in tens of grade 3 wind element beast crystals, as well as a few spiritual formations. It made the speed faster and the environment within the carriage more comfortable. Zhongsho's personality was just like that. If he had the ability, he wouldn't be stingy to make his life better. Unfortunately, he still couldn't find that Wind Rider foal. That day at the foot of Blood Valley Demon Corpse Mountain, he did meet 2. Unfortunately, one was broken by him, and he didn't dare to ride the other. He wouldn't even touch something that could easily expose his identity. That person had a full 10 grade 7 mythic masters beside him, so the power behind him definitely wasn't weak. Who knew where he came from? Leisurely looking on from the side, Chu Shui clumsily brought those cloud stepping foals one by one to the front of the carriage and put on the reins. Only then did Zhongsho slowly walk over. However, before he walked over, he heard a bell-like questioning voice from behind. "Where are you all going? Are you leaving Cloud Saint City?" Zhongsho sighed in his heart. He didn't need to turn his head to know that it was Xianyuan Irin. Why did he have to come back at this time of all times? Acting like he didn't hear it, Zhongsho continued to walk towards the carriage. Then, he heard the sound of wind as the red shadow flashed beside him. Xianyuan Irin was already blocking the carriage door. Sizing up Zhongsho, the doubt in her eyes grew thicker. "Why are you dressed like that? Why are you learning how to walk like that mechanical puppet? Don't you know that if other people see you, they will laugh at you for being an idiot? You still haven't answered me. are you leaving Cloud Saint City? Zhong Shou was wearing a wide robe. His body seemed to have doubled in size. However, his small face was still exquisite, looking really weird. His actions were also really stiff, no different from when the mechanical puppet walked. This was actually a special characteristic of the lightning travel spirit bone. Normally, when it walked, it was indeed somewhat mechanical. His body shook left and right. Seeing that Xianyuan Irin had no intention of moving aside, Zhong Shou could only helplessly stand still, saying seriously, Zhong Shou is about to leave and return to my Gantian mountain. Miss Xianyuan, you have a bright future ahead of you. Why must you follow someone like me, whose life is in danger? I've already prepared the insulation letter. Please go back as soon as possible, Mississippi. I'm sure Uncle and Annie have been worried about you for a long time. Xianyuan Irin's expression did not change at all. She only stared fixedly at Zhong Shou's eyes. These words, Zhong Shou, you actually dare to say them. What do you want to do with my reputation and integrity? Have you ever heard that starvation is a small matter, but losing one's chastity is a big matter? Chu Shui didn't notice anything strange, but Li Yunyang's eyebrows twitched subconsciously. She had many questions in her heart. What did this have to do with reputation? Zhong Shou also suddenly felt a little guilty. He coughed lightly and decided to change his method. Even if Miss Xianyuan wants to marry me, it has to be a proper marriage. Although we are engaged, our parents' orders and matchmakers' words have not been completed. Before we are truly married, how can we travel together? He thought to himself that this girl's brain was flooded with water. Why was she so stubborn about loyalty, kindness, and morals? Then, if he used the same rules to deal with her, he would definitely succeed. As expected, Xianyuan Irin hesitated slightly, but a moment later she decisively shook her head. These are all small matters. You will face dangers along the way. As your fiancé, how can I sit still and do nothing? Actually, in my eyes, it is best if we don't go to Gantian Mountain. Zhong Shou, why don't we go out to sea together? If you give up the Monster King position, I can also not bother about the Pill Fountain sect. Zhong Shou's mouth was agape. How did she end up talking about eloping? Li Yunyang's expression changed. Her brows furrowed, and she was really anxious. Xianyuan Irin acted like she didn't see anything, her tone determined. No matter where you go, I will follow you until you are truly safe. Zhong Shou laughed bitterly. I, Zhong Shou, am an indomitable spirit. Why would I need a girl to protect me? Yesterday in the back courtyard, you should have sensed something. In your eyes, how many people below the martial ancestor realm are my opponents? When Li Yunyang heard that, she burst out into laughter. She was just short of saying that he was shameless. Xianyuan Irin's face was filled with doubt. Since what? Are you talking about Uncle Ian? His knife rhythm has formed and is close to entering power, as expected from a famous family. However, if I want to protect you, Uncle Ian will still need some time. Zhong Shou couldn't help but facepalm. He thought back to how Xianyuan Irin was shocked and her breathing was chaotic. She probably couldn't sense what was happening outside. Shaking his head slightly, Zhong Shaoxin had a thought. The black wave, sword hidden in his sleeves, was about to shoot out. At this moment, no matter what he said, it wasn't as convincing as a spiritual sword that could fly through the air. However, he suddenly thought about something, and the black wave sword stopped in his sleeves. Thinking about how stubborn this girl was, even if he used all his strength, would it be of any use? He might end up making a fool of himself. Before he could think of a reason, Xianyuan Irin opened her mouth once more. Even if there's a day when you have the ability to protect yourself, Zhong Shou, don't worry. How can this marriage contract be broken so easily? If you don't want me, then I can only follow your wishes. I will not marry for the rest of my life to preserve my chastity. All right, where's Uncle Ian? Zhong Shou had no choice, walking around Xianyuan Irin in annoyance. What Uncle Ian? He saw that I wasn't having a good time and ran away by himself yesterday. Xianyuan Irin was shocked, following which her brows furrowed. I don't believe you. Yin Yang is a loyal person, so why would he betray his master and run away? You are lying. Just as she was about to follow behind, she saw Zhong Shou, who had already boarded the carriage, looking down with an evil smile. Miss Xianyuan wants to travel with me? Zhong Shou doesn't mind, but is it convenient for you? Sizing up Xianyuan Irin, it was like he had just seen her yesterday. That alluring body was still right in front of his eyes. He remembered that before the mysterious moon would Brilliance technique reached small success, she had to cultivate it once every 3 days. Moreover, she had to be naked. If she had clothes that could resist fire, then it was okay. If she didn't, then she could only let him feast his eyes like yesterday. Xianyuan Irin's face instantly flushed red. Scoffing, she turned around and left furiously. Sister Yunyang, go find people from Lingyun's sect and borrow a carriage for me. Li Yunyang's heart jumped, not coming back to her senses for a long time. She only felt that Xianyuan Irin's words were filled with an indescribable shyness. Zhong Shou heaved a sigh of relief and wanted to let this girl get on the carriage as well. Then, he wouldn't have to do anything along the way. When he entered the city, he was surrounded by people, but when he left, it was a little desolate. When he passed the city gates, he saw Zhongling riding a wind rider foal of the city gates, looking over coldly. Her eyes were filled with disdain, like she was saying, 13 days ago, did you think that today would happen? When you chased me, Zhongling, away from the city gates, did you think that the one who would be chased out of Cloud Saint City would be you? Zhong Shou. Did those words from a few days ago come true? In the next moment, he saw Zhongling gallop forward on the horse, like she was about to gallop over. Zhong Shou decisively rolled down the window and shouted for the horse to speed up. Chu Shui instantly waved her whip, urging the 18 Cloud stepping foals to gallop. Their speed was actually comparable to that of Zhongling's Windrider foal. The latter probably didn't have any intentions of chasing, and in just a moment, she was left far behind. Zhong Shou was too lazy to argue with this person, but in his heart, he still felt really depressed. He wished that a bunch of assassins would come and use the swords in his sleeves to viciously kill them and stun them. Hey. So, Zhong Shou, am still unable to truly remain calm. Although my heart is as calm as water, it is like the moon in the well. When it meets the wind and sand, there are still ripples. In my chest, I still have the heart of victory, the thoughts of fame and fortune. Keeping his emotions, Zhong Shou slowly removed all the distracting thoughts, sitting on the soft couch and entering deep thought. At this moment, if one looked carefully, one would notice that the muscles in his body were trembling at an undetectable rate. This was the internal breathing leading technique. Since absorbing the lightning phoenix egg, Zhong Shou had been using this technique at every moment. It caused the Xiantian essence energy that had accumulated in various parts of his body to solidify. It would be easier for it to merge into his body in the future. As for Zhong Shou's consciousness, it was like a swan flying into the underworld. In the long river of his memories, it started to flow. In his last life, he had stored half a library, hundreds of thousands of books in his mind. He had read many secret manuals, many of which were top-secret techniques from some large sects 10,000 years ago. However, a chi cultivation method suitable for his dual meridian body was already really hard to find. Spiral meridians like his were never seen before. It was even more impossible to find one that was truly suitable for his half-demon body. If I want to create my own chi cultivation method, then I can use this indefinite spirit emperor art as a reference. As for the lightning phoenix, it has the 9 destruction maniac lightning technique in its memory. Although it isn't as good as the mysterious cloud spirit sex secret technique, it is enough to design a basic chi cultivation method below martial ancestor. The problem is that I don't know the specialty of my human race bloodline, so this chi cultivation method has to be all-inclusive. Oh right, how could I forget that the heaven-swallowing energy conversion technique mentioned that the essence of all phenomena in the world is the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. With this as the basis, it might work. Oh, there are people in front. Zhong Shou was originally deep in thought. The thought from before was like a ray of light in the darkness, surprising him. However, moments later, wariness appeared in his eyes. At this moment, he was already 15 miles out of Cloud Saint City, and there were occasionally some people on the road. However, he didn't pay attention to any of them. Even if it was a Xiantian master, Zhongsho didn't care about him. The meaning of the words, "there are people in front," meant that there were people who could threaten his life. Slightly analyzing, the aura of these two people seemed familiar, and they didn't have any killing intent. So, it is them. Zhongsho shook his head, walking to the front of the carriage and ordering Chu Shui to stop the carriage. Following which, he saw a few people quietly waiting by the side of the road. Samarim directly looked at the 60-year-old man. "Are you Cloud Saint City, Lord Su Jingyuan?" In Donglin Cloud Continent, Gantian Mountain was like a big country, which was why Zhongsho directly called him by his name. Chapter 111. The people beside the brocade-robed old man immediately became angry. Their eyes were filled with annoyance as they stared right at Zhongsho. Beside them stood a man around 40, coldly looking at Zhongsho. "Although the prince's identity is noble, you don't know your manners. Don't you know how to respect the young and old?" Zhongsho smiled, not bothering at all, continuing to get off the carriage and expressionlessly looking at the old man. Su Jinyuan himself was slightly awkward, opening his mouth to stop the person beside him. "Lianqing, shut up. The prince is the prince of Gantian Mountain. He isn't being rude." He then bowed towards Zhongsho. "Prince, please forgive me. During this half a month, I had matters outside and had no time to leave. Only today was I able to rush back to meet the prince." "Prince, are you leaving the city to leave? Why don't you stay in my Cloud Saint City for a few more days?" Chu Shui, who was sitting in front, instantly curled her lips. She thought to herself that these people were really hypocritical. They were obviously chasing him away, but they still acted like they wanted him to stay. She couldn't help but wave her horse whip, which was really ear-piercing on this wide and spacious road. It caused those cloud-stepping foals to become restless and uneasy. Zhongsho acted like he didn't hear it, not even blinking. "City Lord is too polite. Although Cloud Saint City is good, it isn't my hometown. No matter how beautiful the scenery is, it is hard to truly feel at ease, which is why I want to return." Su Jingyuan nodded slightly when he heard that. "Prince Zhongsho's words make sense, so I won't try to persuade you anymore. I brought some humble gifts, and I hope that the Crown Prince will accept them. In the future, if you see Sir Lei Dong, please help me apologize. I have my own difficulties and am really helpless. During this half a month, if there was anything I didn't take good care of you, please forgive me." Zhongsho smiled. No wonder this person wanted to run out of the city to meet him. He was afraid that he would argue in front of Lei Dong and cause trouble. His eyes moved, only to see that the few servants were still holding a few wooden plates. There were a few hundred grade 3 beast crystals and 3 talisman soldiers placed neatly. Other than that, there were also 2 jars that sealed guardian spirit beasts. The jar was sealed shut, but from the aura it gave off, it should be a soul beast that was around the 2nd rank. It was obviously not a small gift. However, if one were to say that it was thick and heavy, it was still far from it. Secretly shaking his head, Zhongsho felt that there was nothing to be unhappy about. However, the fact that the other party had brought these items over and even personally gifted them to him showed that he had the intention to form a good relationship with him. If he wanted to blame someone, he could only blame himself. His reputation as a trash was simply too widespread. A moment later, Zhongsho's gaze was fixed on the old man's left arm. Raising his eyebrows slightly, he said, "City Lord's left arm is in such a state. Could it be that it was injured by someone's sword intent? Why don't you ask someone to expel it?" According to Yin Yang, the City Lord of Cloud Saint City had been injured many years ago and had yet to fully recover. It was most likely this injury. His flesh and blood were almost completely dried up. It was obvious that someone had forcefully cut off his chi, blood, and essence energy. It was equivalent to being crippled. Lianqing's expression changed once more. His eyes sunk. The other few servants all had furious looks on their faces. This teen really touched a sore spot. No wonder he ended up in such a state. Su Jingyuan was really open-minded. Although he was a little unhappy, he still kept his temper and explained, Prince's eyesight is really good. My left arm is indeed here because of the sword intent left behind. It was also because I was too arrogant in the past that I attracted this disaster. During these few years, I asked someone to expel it. However, the person who injured me was not only an ascended ancestor, but the sword intent he contained was also a little weird. Even Sir Lei Dong had no way to expel it, and could only remain like this. Zhong Shou frowned. The sword intent that was left in Su Jingyuan's body was indeed a little weird. However, in the future, he had seen similar martial path intents several times. Actually, it wasn't much of a problem. The spiritual energy of the future declined, but the martial path that was developed to its peak during the God Emperor era was mostly preserved. Many of the secret techniques of the hidden sects were spread to the commoners, and he had benefited greatly from it. Thinking about it carefully for a moment, Zhong Shou smiled. During this half a month, City Lord has more or less protected me from the wind and rain. I, Zhong Shou, don't like to owe people favors. Today I will help you get rid of this sword intent, and we are even. Su Jingyuan was startled, following which he found it amusing. His injuries were something that even an ascended ancestor couldn't do anything about. A kid who had just reached 13 and couldn't even cultivate actually dared to say such big words. He was so arrogant to say that he would help him get rid of the sword intent in his body. The few servants beside him were the same. Before this, when they looked at Zhong Shou, their gazes were filled with rage. However, at this moment, it was like they were looking at an idiot. This person probably wasn't really impolite, but his personality was a little funny. Lianqing sighed. Prince, even Sir Lei Dong said that unless a spiritual grandmaster with 9 meridians of the heaven chakra level helped, there was no hope of curing it. Prince, do you think that you can beat Sir Lei Dong? My master appreciates your good intentions. What he meant was that he didn't need to worry about it. When Zhong Shou heard that, he scoffed. How is it so complicated to get rid of this sword intent? If he didn't understand, then naturally it would be tough. However, if he knew the theory behind it, it wouldn't be difficult to remove it. Even now, he could barely do it. He was too lazy to explain to this person, walking towards Su Jingyuan. Lianqing was slightly shocked, suddenly stepping forward and blocking in front of Zhong Shou. However, Zhong Shou suddenly pointed out with his right hand. In that instant, numerous illusions appeared in front of his eyes. In his mind, he felt as if an unfathomable and tyrannical sword was stabbing towards him from the sky. It actually gave him a feeling that he had nowhere to hide and couldn't avoid it. Lianqing's pupils constricted, and he immediately moved to the right. He instinctively reached for the blade at his waist, but before he could pull it out, a purple lightning flashed. He saw a purple lightning flash and a finger strike out from the illusions, smashing into the side of his right shoulder. His entire body instantly went soft and numb, unable to summon up any energy, nearly collapsing to the ground. His heart was filled with shock and fear, and his mind was completely blank. To be able to become the butler of the Cloud Saint City Lord, his strength was above Xiantian, a Xiantian master who had opened 2 meridians of the Earth Chakra level. At this moment, he couldn't even block one finger from his teen. From when he went up to block to when he was restrained, less than a flick of a finger had passed. Was this Gantian mountain prince really a piece of trash who hadn't even opened his chakra meridians? Could it be that someone else was impersonating him in order to harm Master? Numerous thoughts instantly filled his mind. However, even if he tried his best to struggle, the strength in his body was slowly disappearing. That Su Jingyuan was also shocked, his eyes filled with wariness as he looked at the half-monster teen who had safely passed by Lianqing's side. Without any hesitation, Su Jingyuan stepped forward, the thick energy around him surging. Like a lion that had just woken up, his shoulders lowered as he coldly looked down at Zhong Shou. The aura was thick and heavy, fierce and cold, giving off a cold, killing intent. It was like it was about to explode, and in an instant, it could tear Zhong Shou into pieces. In the next moment, Su Jingyuan suddenly felt a strong intent explode out from Zhong Shou's body. Compared to before, it was several times stronger. The half-monster teen in front of him had dozens of illusions, and he was unable to see where his real body was. Clumps of clouds gathered at the side, faintly discernible. The surrounding mythic master servants all turned ashen white under the suppression of this intent, unable to get close. Cloud shocking god destroying sword intent. Su Jingyuan's pupils constricted, and he wanted to go all out to take down this weird half-monster teen, only to hear a light come, as Zhong Shou held a sword in his hand. A bright thunder-toothed sword, shining with lightning, pointed at him from afar. That cloud-like, mist-like sword intent changed once more. This time, it was extremely sharp, like it could pierce through everything in the world, stabbing into one's heart. It made him feel like there was no part of his body that wasn't a fatal weakness. The sword intent that had been hidden in his body for a long time seemed to be resonating with one another, suddenly charging out from all parts of his body. It caused the energy meridians in his body to be blocked, and his aura was in a mess. In that instant, he couldn't move at all. The energy that was gathered around his body was slowly being destroyed. At this moment, Su Jingyuan could only move his eyes. Looking at Zhong Shou calmly walking over, his eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. Waves were raging in his chest, and he couldn't control himself. If he didn't know that the person in front of him was only 13 and his looks weren't right, and he didn't look like he was faking it, he would have thought that the martial path intent left in his body belonged to him. From tens of feet away, he was able to control the sword intent in his body. Why did this teen come? Did he really want to harm him and assassinate him? Was he the real Gantian mountain prince, Zhong Shou? Was he the dual meridian trash in the rumors? If he wasn't Zhong Shou, why would he do that? If this person wanted to kill him, it would be as easy as flipping his hand. Why did he have to set up such a situation to draw him out? If he was really Zhong Shou, why did he have to hide so deeply? How was this person trash? In just a few breaths, he suppressed lynching such that he couldn't move and could only be slaughtered. How could there be such trash in this world? He obviously had a secret technique that he didn't reveal. Zhong Shou looked at Su Jingyuan's expression and roughly guessed what he was thinking. He wasn't willing to argue with this person, expressionlessly shaking his head. Zhong Shou was rude today. Please forgive me. Placing his hand on Su Jingyuan's wrist, Zhong Shou sent a thread of energy in. A moment later, he broke out into a laugh. As expected, it is the meridian yin-yang technique and the withering sword energy. Zhong Shou isn't talented, but I can help solve some of your problems. Not caring whether Su Jingyuan agreed or not, he stabbed a few golden needles in. Just as Su Jingyuan felt the meridians in his body going berserk, unable to vent, he thought that he was about to die. Zhong Shou used a lightning tooth sword to slice his left arm. A streak of fresh blood spurted out, spraying 100 feet away. It was mixed with threads of sharp energy, instantly causing numerous holes to appear in the grass. Chapter 112. The moment the blood was spilled out, Su Jingyuan felt his body relax. Half of the withering sword intent was still wreaking havoc in his body, but was unable to trap the energy within his body. His left arm, although still dry, wasn't as dead as before. Instead, it was brimming with life. His vital energy was flowing smoothly. On the other hand, all the weeds within 1,000 feet to the left withered in an instant. Then they regained their vitality and grew again, turning green. In a short dozen breaths, it went through several withering cycles. In the end, it totally withered with no signs of life left. Su Jingyuan only felt a wave of joy, like the giant rock on his back that had been pressing down on him for decades had finally been moved away. However, his body still couldn't move. He could already control the true qi in his body, but who knows what Zhong Shou did to cause him to be unable to even raise his arm. He could only stay on the spot and listen to what Zhong Shou said. This senior who used the meridian yin-yang technique shouldn't have any bad intentions. He was just prepared to punish you and teach you a lesson. This withering sword intent was supposed to dissipate after 3 years, leaving behind the meridian yin-yang energy, which could help you enter the Earth Meridian's 7th chakra realm. Maybe something happened to you while you were cultivating, or maybe you were too eager to get rid of the sword intent, causing it to be unable to dissipate and remain in your body. When Su Jingyuan heard that, he was startled once more. Although he didn't know whether or not those words were true, a bitter smile appeared on his face. He had been tortured by this so-called withering sword intent for an entire few tens of years. So it turned out that he was reaping what he had sown. However, the one who was more shocked was the half-monster teen in front of him. At this moment, even a fool could see that Zhong Shou didn't have any bad intentions towards him. He really wanted to help him get rid of the sword intent, and he had already done so. Thinking back to what he had done before, Su Jingyuan's face couldn't help but turn red. This person was so capable. No wonder Sir Lei Dong paid so much attention to him. He could only laugh at himself for making so many guesses. He even thought that Sir Lei Dong had randomly sent this teen to his Cloud Saints city. He obviously wanted him to try his best to befriend him. With this young man's ability to easily control the sword intent of others, why would he need the protection of the Cloud Saint city? Zhong Shou was too lazy to care about his feelings. He casually explained a few words, pulled out the gold needles, and turned to leave. His tone was still indifferent as he said, "Actually, more than half of the withering glory sword intent still remains. Unfortunately, my cultivation is not enough to help the city lord get rid of it completely. I can only help the city lord recover your left arm. If the city lord were to meet another heaven-ranked expert in the future, he should be able to expel them smoothly. I have offended you just now. Please don't take it to heart. Goodbye." Actually, if he spent a little more effort and a few more months, it really wouldn't be that difficult. However, he did not have a deep relationship with this person, so there was no need for him to waste his time on Su Jingyuan. He didn't want any of those gifts and just boarded the carriage on his own. There was no need for him to urge him. Chu Shui giggled and waved her whip again, urging the 18 cloud treading foals to gallop forward. Smoke and dust filled the air, covering all the people behind him. By the time the dust settled, the cloud-crossing carriage was already more than 300 meters away. Lianqing's body had recovered some strength, and he could move his forelimbs. His face flushed red as he knelt down in front of Su Jingyuan. "I am useless. I have eyes, but no pupils, unable to see a true god. I actually made the master misjudge and nearly missed it." As he said that, Lianqing's forehead was covered in sweat. If it was just missing a chance to get to know a future top expert, then it was okay. However, when he thought about how, if he missed out on this day, Su Jingyuan might not have any hope of recovering his injury for the rest of his life, Lianqing felt his chest go numb, his heart palpitating. Luckily, he was blessed, and the master decided to come out of the city to send the Gantian Mountain Prince off. If not, the outcome would be unimaginable. Su Jingyuan's energy cultivation was really high, and he had recovered long before Lianqing. He just looked at the carriage in the distance. When he heard that, he gave out a sad smile, waving his hand. "This matter has nothing to do with you. This prince really hides deeply, even I can't see any signs. It would be weird if you could notice anything unusual." Lianqing's face flushed red, not willing to get up. Su Jingyuan didn't try to persuade him, continuing to look at the carriage. What is the relationship between that prince and the Lingyun sect? He can actually use the cloud-shocking god, destroying sword intent. Moreover, his sword intent could change. Who knew what level his sword Dao had reached? I heard that to be able to control the sword intent of others, one has to reach the peak of sword intent. However, with his age, how is that possible? I don't understand. This prince obviously has no opponent below the martial ancestor level. Why does he have to hide his abilities so well? As he said that, he gave out a gloating smile. Zhong Weiran started from nothing and rose up in Donglin Cloud Continent. How can such a tiger father have such a useless son? Sigh, those people who have bad intentions for the Gantian Mountain Monster King position are just like dogs and chickens in the eyes of this prince. He doesn't care about them at all. Lianqing also agreed. Thinking back to that short exchange, just now he still felt terrified. If that prince wanted to kill him, he could have taken his life in a breath. Even Su Jinyuan, who was a martial ancestor expert, was caught off guard and restrained. With such strength, he could return with the strength his father left behind. In just a few days, he could control Gantian Mountain. His heart suddenly moved, and he was in deep thought. The Prince Zhongsho is really talented, unparalleled in the world, but he wants to hide it so well. However, looking at those people in Gantian Mountain, there aren't many of them. To be able to make the prince so wary and bear with it, there should be another reason. Most probably. Su Jingyuan slightly nodded his head, following which he gave out a bitter laugh. If that is the case, then I owe him a huge favor. The Prince Zhongsho hid for over 10 years, but today he made an exception for me. I am ashamed. If those old friends find out about this, they will laugh at me. Mr. Lei Dong was kind enough to help me, but I chased him out. In the end, it ended up like this. I'm so ashamed. As he said that, Su Jingyuan's brows furrowed once more. After a long while, he sighed, make a trip back to the city and prepare a huge gift. No matter what, you have to chase up. Although that prince wants to repay me for protecting him for over 10 days, I, Su Jingyuan, can't be at ease. I am ashamed to accept it. Lianxing acknowledged, but he didn't move. Sweeping around, he said, then the people nearby, deal with them all. Su Jingyuan's expression was really calm, like he was talking about something really normal, a sense of dominance hidden within. Since his left arm had recovered, why did he need to care about other people's faces? However, his eyes were filled with a faint sense of pity. This time, he had really missed out on it. He regretted that he didn't personally meet this Gantian Mountain prince. Returning to the carriage, Zhongsho casually took out a talisman to wipe away the sweat on his body. He swallowed a pill, allowing the true qi in his body to recover slightly. This time it was really easy, just that the consumption was slightly higher. Although that Su Jingyuan was at the peak of the martial ancestor realm, there was still that withering sword intent left in his body. It was like an egg being held in his hands, unable to cause any waves. Only when he activated the cloud, shocking God, destroying sword intent, and used the golden needles did he spend some effort. Chu Shui, who was in front, was smiling. Young master, you vented your anger. You should have taught those few people a lesson. Who asked them to look down on you? Zhongsho was delighted when he heard that. Not long ago, he was thinking about casually finding someone to vent his anger on, but now he scolded, nonsense. How can one be so shallow when dealing with matters? Is it that if a dog bites you, you bite back? If you're bullied by others, you must take revenge before you are willing to let it go? Chu Shui's anger dissipated, but she still muttered, then you shouldn't have helped that Cloud Saint City Lord remove that withering sword intent. Looking at them, it is better if you don't care. Zhongsho was just acting to tease this brat. This time he frowned and shook his head, his tone becoming serious. People give me a peach, and I repay them with wine. To me, this is just something I did casually, really simple. To him, it might be a matter of life and death, so why be stingy? He didn't say anything more, casually taking a fruit and throwing it out of the window. It actually turned in a spiral and flew to the front. He laughed and scolded. Brat, you are so young, but you have such a temper. Drive the carriage properly. Chushua cried out and said in a wrong tone, Young master, Schwer, is already very stupid. You are not allowed to hit my head. In just a moment, he heard the sound of fruits being eaten, as well as a string of bell-like laughter. Zhongsho's lips curled up as he thought back to the Cloud Saint City Lord Matter. Perhaps this man of great talent and bold vision in the past was truly old. However, this could also be because he was standing in his position, which was why he saw it this way. In the eyes of others, they would only praise this Su Jingyuan for knowing the situation and protecting himself. After being disturbed by this matter, the inspiration that had appeared before had completely dissipated. Zhongsho closed his eyes once more to comprehend, but he didn't gain anything even after a long time. His mind was in a mess, so he decided to walk to the window and look out at the scenery to calm himself down. In his field of vision, he saw smoke and dust rumbling behind him. Zhong Shaoxin's heart instinctively jumped. In just a moment, he saw another carriage appear in front of him. There was no one driving it, so the horses galloped on their own. There were also 18 horses, but they were all Windrider foals. Who knows where these two people got them from? It caused this carriage to travel at extreme speed, and in just a moment, it had already caught up. On the carriage stood a red-shirt person. Looking closely, it was Xianyuan Irin. Looking down from above, he coldly stared at them. Li Yunyang stood at the shaft of the carriage, her eyes cold. Zhong Shou couldn't help but feel his head hurt. This girl really chased over. Chapter 113. After catching up to Zhong Shou's carriage, Xianyuan Irin and Li Yunyang ran into Zhong Shou's carriage without hesitation. They didn't even bother about the carriage behind them. What was weird was that those 18 Windrider foals were all really tamed. They didn't need anyone to drive them, and they could gallop together and chase closely behind. Zhong Shaoxin was really down. Only when the two of them entered did he manage to raise his spirits. That isn't good, right? Miss Xianyuan, you're still unmarried, and being in a small room with me as your fiancé, your reputation won't be good. This matter is urgent, and we can't care so much, as long as we have a clear conscience. Moreover, with Sister Yunyang here, who would say anything? Xianyuan Irin shook her head and didn't care at all. Then she looked at Zhong Shou with anticipation. You still haven't told me where the recipe for the Meridian Spirit Pill came from. Are there other recipes? Although the Meridian Spirit Pill has been refined to solve your dual meridian body, it is best if you find another recipe or use acupuncture or a fist technique that can stretch your meridians. Who knows, maybe the medicine encyclopedia you have seen has other clues. There isn't any in the medicine encyclopedia. I just occasionally saw some recipes. Zhong Shou felt his body had no energy. Although he was impressed in his heart that Xianyuan Irin was really smart, he wasn't willing to deal with her. However, when he saw that her face was filled with disappointment, he suddenly had an idea. He took out a brush and ink and casually wrote down a recipe. However, there are a few similar recipes, but I don't know what they are for. One of them is called the Chill Spirit Mysterious Sense Pill. Maybe Miss Irin can use it. In a last life, he didn't know how to refine pills, but he wanted to. He remembered many recipes in the future, but didn't know how to refine any of them. It wasn't a waste to write this recipe for her as compensation for the Meridian Spirit Pill. Xianyuan Irin's eyes lit up. When Zhong Shou wrote the last line, she eagerly snatched it. Chill Spirit Mysterious Sense Pill. Ice bluegrass, perilla leaves, citrus aurantium, black bug, cold alum. The strange pill formula seemed to be extremely difficult to concoct. Two of the herbs were completely unheard of. What was the use of this pill formula? If we don't know what it does, we won't know what kind of heat to use when refining pills. This time it wasn't the same as when he identified the Meridian Spirit Pill. Although Zhong Shou had written down all the required amounts of ingredients, he still didn't know what to do. Xianyuan Irin was still unable to confirm the use of this pill. He simply held the pill formula in his hand and muttered to himself in a daze. Seeing this, Zhong Shou regained some of his confidence. Although Xianyuan Irin's talent was strong, there was still a limit. The Chilling Spirit Profound Sense Pill was also a pill formula developed by the later generations. When consumed by those who had reached the Leaving Aperture realm, its effects were similar to the Seven Spirits Sex Snow Spirit Pill. At the same time, it could increase soul power, assist spirit cultivators in meditation, and purify the soul. However, it was 3 times more potent than the Snow Spirit Pill. However, this pill had another effect, which was to make one's entire body as cold as ice. He wrote this pill formula not only for himself, but also to help Xianyuan Irin. At this moment, he couldn't directly tell Xianyuan Irin that this pill could help her cultivate the mysterious moon with brilliance method. At least when she cultivated, she could wear clothes and not be naked. He could only let Xianyuan Irin think about it herself. However, Zhong Shou was happy to see such a situation. As for that Li Yunyang, he was too lazy to bother about her. He decided to just lie on the soft bed and continue to think about the many martial path techniques in his memory. Anyways, he couldn't get rid of these two people, so he would just treat them as air. With my heaven-swallowing energy conversion technique as the foundation, it can store everything and contain everything. Isn't it compatible with my martial path that incorporates the strengths of hundreds of schools? However, it is best to remove some of the flaws. I would rather it be weaker than leave any problems. As for how to merge illusionary techniques and lightning techniques, I can also refer to the seven-tail Linghu and lightning phoenix marks in my soul ocean. With that, I am enlightened. With some ideas, Zhongsho's thoughts flew freely. Numerous heart cultivation chants, the essence of various energy cultivation techniques were found by him one by one before he pieced them together. Without spending much effort, a rough framework was gradually taking shape. He even thought about the basic bodily chakra portion before Xiantian. He just needed to test it out. Hey, spiral meridians, indefinite spirit emperor art, 9 destruction violent lightning technique, heaven swallowing energy conversion technique. Who knows, maybe I, Zhongsho, can personally create a world-shaking technique. It is best if it can complement my spiritual cultivation. All right, my soul has reached the out-of-body realm, and I also need to cultivate a soul cultivation technique. Although the heaven-swallowing energy conversion technique is good, it isn't suitable. I need to find another soul cultivation technique to complement it. The joy on his face faded, and Zhongsho started to frown. Li Yunyang was at the side and looked on in confusion. The disdain in her eyes couldn't help but become thicker. He knew that his cultivation talent wasn't as good as others and that he had a dual meridian body. He should work harder than others. However, he was so dispirited, lying on the soft bed all day. Who knows what dirty things he was thinking about? In the future, even if Little Miss could find a way to unlock the dual meridian body, it would be useless. This person was just a pile of mud that couldn't be helped. Looking at the carriage, when she saw the newly carved runes, Li Yunyang was slightly shocked. She thought to herself that the talisman formation within the carriage was really exquisite. However, a moment later, she didn't care anymore. Even someone like Yin Yang actually left Zhongsho. It was obvious that he didn't have much hope for this Gantian mountain prince. One could imagine the situation this kid was in. Just as she was laughing coldly, she suddenly saw a cloud of dust rise up behind the carriage outside the window. They came really quickly, and in just a moment they had caught up. The person at the front was wearing a black shirt, around 40 years old, his body dyed in fresh blood. Behind him was a group of cavalry, 3 Xiantian masters, a total of 12 7 Meridian mythic masters in iron armor. At the very back were 2 girls whose cultivations weren't weak either. There were also 10 Wind Rider foals, a few of which had purple gold eyes and sharp horns on their heads. Li Yunyang's brows furrowed. She recognized this person. He was the housekeeper of the Cloud Saint City Lord Manor. She couldn't help but find it weird. Why wasn't this person in the city? Why was he here? Just as her hand was pressing down on her sword, she saw the black shirt man jump up and fly in front of the carriage. After standing still, he bowed. "Benefactor, please wait for a moment. Lianqing has something to report." The 18 Cloud stepping foals in front were all shocked, standing up like humans. Su Chuxue finally managed to control the wildebeests and force them to stop. Li Yunyang, on the other hand, was secretly shocked. "Benefactor, what did that mean?" On this carriage, there was only one man, Zhongsho. Why did she call Zhongsho benefactor? Did she make a mistake? Zhongsho's thoughts were interrupted once more. However, this time he had expected it and wasn't angry. He didn't get off the carriage, only standing by the window and looking out. He expressionlessly glanced at the group of cavalry. "What do you want?" When he saw those exquisite bags, Zhongsho had a rough idea of why they were here. The 10 martial masters all got off their horses and knelt down in front of the cloud crossing carriage. Their expressions were all extremely respectful and solemn. Li Yunyang felt more and more weird. Not long ago, she had heard that Cloud Saint City's attitude towards Zhongsho was extremely cold. Apart from the tight protection, they pretty much didn't care about him at all. The Cloud Saint City Lord didn't even see him once. The reason why Zhong Shou left the city was said to be because Cloud Saint City wanted to chase him away. But what on earth was going on with this scene before his eyes? Lianqing opened his mouth once more, his voice still loud and respectful. My master asked me to pass on the message. I won't forget this kindness. The prince's journey to the west this time is very small, which is why he sent these 10 over people to be the prince's bodyguards. These people are the city lord's servants and owe the city lord a huge favor. From now on, they will be the prince's slaves and can be ordered around. There are also some gifts to strengthen the crown prince's character. When she heard that, Li Yunyang's expression froze. 12 mythic masters, 3 Xiantian masters. Not only to follow him, but to directly give them to Zhong Shou. That Cloud Saint City Lord Su Jingyuan's power was just average, but he actually dared to take out such a huge gift. What kindness did Zhong Shou have to him? Why did he need to repay him with such a huge gift? Looking at those gifts, although they were wrapped in silk, one could tell how valuable they were from the aura, amongst which there were at least 4 grade 5 beast crystals. Zhong Shou laughed, coldly shaking his head. I don't want people. Zhong Shou doesn't need anyone to protect him. However, I'll accept the gifts and horses from the city lord. I can use these Windrider foals. When Li Yunyang heard that, she was furious. You, Zhong Shou, a piece of trash, actually dare to say that you don't need anyone to protect you? Did he really plan to rely on the 2 of them to return to Gantian Mountain? These gifts weren't cheap. 18 Windrider foals, each one worth 30 grade 4 beast crystals. It was hard to find even with 10,000 gold. Only Cloud Saint City, which was close to the Cloud Ocean and was one of the places where Windrider foals were produced, could take them out. There were also 4 mutated golden eye Windrider beasts that could control groups of foals and scare off beasts. Their combat strength was really high, something that even they didn't have. Zhong Shou's tone was like accepting these things was giving Cloud Saint City a huge favor. Lianqing was slightly delighted, hesitating for a moment before opening his mouth. With the prince's ability, you really don't need these people. However, to ride the Windrider foals, you need a coachman. The person beside me is called Lian Fan, and he is also a Xiantian. His ability isn't bad. He is really tight-lipped and loyal. His family, young and old, is under the control of the city lord. He definitely won't spoil the prince's plans. Zhong Shou was startled. Tight-lipped? Spoil my plans? What plans do I, Zhong Shou, have to be spoiled by you all? Following which he understood something, feeling like he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He wanted to explain, but he was too lazy to waste his breath, thinking to himself that he would just let these people misunderstand. As for Li Yunyang, her mouth was agape as she stared at Zhong Shou. For the first time, she felt that this Gantian mountain prince, who was like trash in her eyes, was really deep and indiscernible. Chu Shui's brows rose up, revealing a look of joy. If there was a new coachman, then she would be free. Driving was the most boring and annoying thing. Chapter 114. Looking at Lian Fan, Zhong Shou hesitated. One look, and one could tell that he was a person of few words. Even when Lianqing said that he was going to give him to Zhong Shou as a slave, he wasn't moved at all. He also didn't have the arrogance of a Xiantian expert. He let Chu Shui drive the carriage to train her ability to control true qi. However, if it was these 18 Windrider foals, it would be a little too much. Using such a person as his driver was also a good idea. Just as he was hesitating, Xinyuan Irin, who was in a daze and didn't notice what was happening around her, suddenly had her eyes light up. I understand. This pill recipe is really amazing. It is even better than my sex exquisite cold pill. It is a great inspiration to me. I can't find the ice bluegrass and snow stem seeds, but I can try to use other herbs to replace them. Who knows? Maybe I can create a new pill recipe. She looked like she really wanted a hug and kiss Zhong Shou. She still had some rationality, her face turning red as she eagerly jumped out of the window and returned to her carriage. Zhongsho was speechless. Without the ice blue grass and snow stem seeds, how could it be called the chilling spirit mysterious sense pill? At most, it could increase soul power, but to remove the firepower of the mysterious moon with brilliance technique was impossible. Opening his mouth, Zhongsho wanted to say something, but stopped. In the end, he sighed helplessly. He looked out of the window once more. That's good. I'll take this person in. Lianqing was delighted, kowtowing once more. Thank you, Prince. It is Lien Fan's fortune to be able to follow you. The city lord also said that Cloud Saint City is in the east of the continent and can't help you much. However, in the future when you take control of Gantian Mountain, if you want to rule over Donglin, we will follow your orders. I will definitely help the Crown Prince sweep through Donglin. After he finished, he stepped aside, respectfully standing at the side of the road with the 10 odd martial artists beside him. Zhongsho didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He returned to Gantian Mountain to complete the wishes of that Zhongsho. Dominating Donglin? He had no intention of doing so, nor did he have the time. After switching to the Wind Rider Full, the speed of Zhongsho's carriage immediately doubled. Lien Fan's driving skills were indeed much better than Chu Shui's. Without saying a word, he drove in front. His expression was cold and indifferent, but he did have some of Yin Yang's demeanor. Li Yunyang didn't leave with Xin Yuaniren. She silently looked at Zhongsho from head to toe, countless thoughts spinning in her mind. How did this half-demon youth make Cloud Saint City owe him such a big favor? Even if he had saved Su Jingyuan's life, there was no need for him to act like this. Lianqing's attitude towards Zhongsho was close to flattery. His words seemed to confirm that Zhongsho would definitely be able to inherit the foundations of Gantian Mountain. Sweeping Donglin? It was like he didn't care about the experts of Donglin Cloud Continent at all. He also said that Cloud Saint City wouldn't dare to go against his orders. He actually called himself a subordinate and was willing to join Zhongsho. It made one speechless and amused, but also made one feel weird. Looking closely, Li Yunyang couldn't help but shake her head. This Zhongsho still didn't have any martial artist aura. He hadn't even opened up his chakra meridians. Was such a person worthy of Lianqing's respect? Was there someone else behind him? Or was it that Gantian Mountain monster king, Zhong, Weiran didn't die? Unable to understand, Li Yunyang couldn't help but ask, "What did you do in Cloud Saint City?" Zhongsho lazily raised his eyelids and looked at this woman expressionlessly. He acted like he didn't see anything and continued to lie on the soft couch. He was too lazy to even look at this woman. His temper was good and he was calm, but that didn't mean that he didn't have a temper. Li Yunyang was furious, scoffing coldly. She knew that she wouldn't be able to get anything out of him, so she went out of the window and returned to the carriage behind. Even if this Gantian Mountain prince had skills that some people didn't know about, if he wanted to compete with mysterious Cloud Spirit Sect and Pill Fountain Sect, it would be like hitting a rock with an egg. What she didn't know was that the moment she left, a ball of light shone from Samurai as he looked at the gift boxes that Lianqing had sent over. Zhongsho didn't care about things like beast crystals and monster bottles. He casually waved his hand, and a long wooden box appeared in his hand. This true chi capturing technique came from the Heart Sutra that he had just pieced together. However, it was slightly sharp. When he summoned it, he didn't control his strength and caused the silk cloth to break into pieces. However, Samurai revealed a satisfied expression. A newly created cultivation technique should be like that, sharp and domineering, leaving no room for error. His explosive strength was strong, but his stamina was really weak. Even if he changed it to spiral meridians, it wouldn't change much, which was why life and death, victory and defeat were decided in an instant. If he didn't win, he would lose. If he didn't live, he would die. The sharper and stronger it was, the more it suited him. However, today it was just a blueprint. If he wanted to cultivate it, he needed a period of time to perfect it. He opened the wooden box with a palm, only to see a shining sword lying within. Lightning Tooth Sword? Samurai's eyes lit up. Only after looking closely did he realize that it wasn't. It was actually a half-spiritual weapon. After the crafting failed, it changed into the shape of a lightning tooth sword. Although the crafting of the spiritual weapon wasn't completed, the strength of the lightning technique was stronger than normal lightning tooth swords. As it was a spiritual weapon crafting process, the sharpness and toughness of this sword were only weaker than his Black Wave sword. Good stuff. I was worried that my original one was badly damaged by this spiral sword energy. With this item, I don't have anything to worry about. Activating his meridians, a sword energy instantly seeped out from the tip of the sword. However, the spirit channels within weren't damaged at all. Zhongsho smiled slightly before keeping the sword. In the next moment, he took out a meridian spirit pill. Just now, he tested it. The meridians in his body had already stabilized, and he could take a second pill. However, just as Zhongsho was about to release the demonized silver bear, he remembered his other protector beast, the rising shadow lion. Now that we have left Cloud Saint City, it is time to call back little Ji. Forming a seal with both hands, Zhongshoxin used his spiritual sense to sense. Just as he was about to summon little Ji, he suddenly thought about Xianyuan Irin, who was following behind him. He couldn't help but feel conflicted. Just as he was hesitating, the rising shadow lion's message spread out in his soul. Peak Xiantian, there is actually an out-of-body realm, Spirit Master. Zhongsho's eyes turned cold, laughing coldly as he gave up on that thought. He walked in front of the carriage and coldly looked at the low mountain peaks on the left, following which he smiled without much care, looking at Chu Shui, who was trying her best to shrink her body to hide her presence. Don't think about slacking off, since you don't need to drive the carriage, then continue to catch birds. Looking at Chu Shui's small face, which instantly frowned even more bitterly than a bitter gourd, Zhongsho was delighted, feeling a little happy. Thinking to himself, was this the joy of teaching a young girl? Not good. I, Zhongsho, have actually become someone who likes perverts amongst the mountains at the peak of a small mountain around 4,000 feet high. For people were facing the peak and looking down. 3 of them had cold and handsome faces, giving off a sinister aura. If Zhongsho was here, he would be able to recognize that the leader was deceitful sword Ren Qianshou, whom he had met once in Cloud Saint City. If it was the knowledgeable Yin Yang, he would be able to recognize who was beside Ren Qianshou. They were Mist sword Xie Jun and Rage sword Yun Tao of the Cloudy Seven Swords. They both gave off a threatening aura. The 2 of them were like unsheathed blades, but they were slightly different. Yun Tao's aura was explosive and fierce, while Xie Jun's body was like a ball of mist, indiscernible and uncertain. The other person was around 30 years old. His face was yellow, and he looked normal. However, there were a few talismans drawn on his face, giving him a weird aura. He held a seal in his hand, and threads of blue light gathered in the center of his palm. In the eyes of the 4 of them, a blue talisman appeared. A moment later, the yellow-faced, middle-aged man looked exhausted, and the blue light in his hand dissipated. The talisman in the eyes of the 4 of them also disappeared. The yellow-faced, middle-aged man closed his eyes and cultivated for a moment before saying expressionlessly, "This 100-mile vision technique is easy to cultivate, but it consumes a lot of soul power. To not let those 2 Xiantian notice, it consumes even more energy. I have just reached the out-of-body realm, and I can't hold on for too long." Brother Zhuang's technique is already not bad. 50 miles away, you can still see everything, like it is right in front of your eyes. A spirit master's technique is really exquisite and mysterious. Xie Jun praised, but his eyes were filled with confusion. Only today, Cloud Saint City's attitude was a little weird. Previously, they killed all the men we arranged near the city gates. Now, they even sent so many gifts and 18 Windrider foals, as well as a Xiantian expert. What exactly did the Crown Prince say to the City Lord of Cloud Saint City when they met? Why did Lianxing suddenly treat Zhongsho so respectfully? If Su Jingyuan really wanted to protect this Zhongsho, why did he let him leave? His words were filled with doubt. Not only Xie Jun, but the other people were the same. Their expressions were filled with confusion. That Cloud Saint City Lord's intentions are hard to guess. Maybe he couldn't take the pressure and could only chase this Zhongsho away. He sent gifts because he didn't want to offend the person behind Gantian Mountain. Unfortunately, this technique can only be seen and not heard. Rin Qinsho shook his head and tried to guess. However, when he thought back to how Cloud Saint City tried to kill him, it didn't make sense. His voice also became serious. I only know that the situation isn't right. If we don't kill this kid, there will be more variables. I feel the same. Xiejun nodded his head. The earlier we end this, the better. Only that Xian Mountain City Princess is a little tough. If we want to kill this Zhongshou, we have to go through her. Speaking of which, who knows what Xian Yuan Irin is thinking? Is she so dumb that she likes that useless Zhongshou? Why did she have to be swept into this whirlpool? Her father is the Xian Mountain City Lord. If there is a chance, it is best if we don't offend her. Yun Tao's brows furrowed, his expression unhappy. Why bother about her? If she dares to block, just kill her. When we brothers do things, we only seek to be straightforward. Why would we have so many misgivings? Chapter 115. Yun Tao's brows furrowed, unhappiness written all over his face. Why bother about her if she dares to block? Just kill her too. When we brothers do things, we just want to be straightforward. Why would we have so many worries? Sixth brother, you can't say that. Xian Yuan Irin's situation is different from before. I only recently found out that she is actually a direct disciple of Pill Fountain sect. We do have to worry about her. Rin Qinsho laughed bitterly. His eyes were really relaxed and arrogant. However, it is easy to go around her. We don't need to waste time. As for how to go around her, he didn't explain. He said solemnly, apart from her, there's also this purple lightning spear Zhong Yuan who won't sit still and watch us kill Zhongshou. This person is also problematic, and if I fight him, I have at most a 50% chance of winning. As for the few Xiantians that Zhongling recruited, Zhongshou's few hidden spiritual guards, we also need to be wary of them. Between the three of us, who should stop them? Xiejun smiled when he heard that. Brother doesn't need to worry about that. Blazing Flame Mountain will help us. Coincidentally, I know where those few people are and can go over to have a chat. They want to follow us and bite off a piece of meat from Gantian Mountain. So how can we not put in any effort? Choosing where to kill them will require some thinking. Rin Qinsho's expression relaxed, his eyes filled with praise. I always trust fifth brother's eloquence. As for when to kill them, let's talk about it in a few days. At this moment, we don't know which path that prince will take. Ling Yun ancestor Rinquang said that he would protect him for 15 days, although it was limited to near Cloud Saint City. However, it is best if we act in a few days. Seeing that Xiejun didn't object, Rin Qinsho nodded his head and knew that this matter was settled. Following which he looked towards that spirit master, surnamed Fong. Brother Fong, what do you think? Are you willing to follow us on this business trip? That spirit master, surnamed Fong, frowned slightly, instinctively wanting to reject. His name was Fong Long, a leader who didn't belong to any faction. Originally, he had nothing to do with this matter. It was only because he had some friendship with the three of them that he was invited to help. If that Zhongshou really had no one to rely on, then so be it. Taking action would be a good deed, and at the same time, he could get some rewards. However, from the way the people of Cloud Saint City acted just now, it was clear that there was something more to this matter that he didn't know. Xiejun seemed to have expected such a reaction, and his eyes flashed. If Brother Fong is willing to lend the three of us a hand, the fifth-grade protector beast in this child's hands will belong to Brother Fong. If you really get into any trouble, you can always hide in my Yunxia Mountain. Fong Long's expression immediately changed. Greed and desire appeared on his face, but he forced himself to restrain himself. His eyes were clear as he said, with the strength of the three of you, killing this kid is as easy as cutting grass. Brother Run has already comprehended the sword force, not to mention those few Xiantian experts. Even a martial ancestor expert might not be able to defeat him. Why do you want me to help you? Rin Qinsho and Xiejun couldn't help but exchange glances and smile. They knew that this person was tempted. The former shook his head slightly, spitting out coldly. As they say, a lion will go all out even when hunting a rabbit. I don't know what skills that Gantian Mountain Prince has, and I'm too lazy to guess. We just need to go all out and crush him. Who cares what methods he has? He won't be able to stop the four of us working together. Fong Long was deep in thought, his fists slowly clenched tight as he made a decision in his heart. Just as he was about to speak, he was shocked, looking to the left, only to see that there was no movement at all. He couldn't help but raise his brows curiously. For some reason, he felt like there was something there, like he was being spied on. However, when he spread out his spiritual sense to investigate, he didn't sense anything. After exiting Cloud Saint City, roughly 30 miles to the east was the eastern cloud ocean. Looking out from the edges of the land, there were large patches of clouds and mist. It was the same as the horizon of the cloud continent, rumbling and surging below. At this moment, roughly 7,000 miles away from the shore, at the center of the eastern cloud ocean, there was a fiery red woman standing in the air above the sea of clouds. She was burning with rage. "Lay Dong, are you a rat? If you have balls, then come out. I know you are hiding here. Didn't you want to test your 100-dragon knife on me? Then come out and fight." Scolding out, Shui Lingbo still wasn't satisfied, stepping down heavily. She stomped heavily, causing the 1,000 miles of cloud ocean to shake. Energy surged, and large patches of mist were forcefully pushed away. However, there was still no trace of Lei Dong. Shui Lingbo scoffed coldly, the violent aura in her eyes growing thicker. "What kind of crazy knife are you? Did you comprehend that mountain and water knife intent in the gutter? Since you have the balls to test your knife on me, then you should be mentally prepared to face the consequences. After I get serious, you are prepared to run and not fight? How is there such a good thing in the world?" Waving her red sleeves, lightning flashed in the sky. Numerous fire clouds gathered over. She took out those rumbling clouds and mist. At this moment, Shui Lingbo didn't look the same as she did 10 days ago. Her skin was more tender, like she was several years younger. At the center of her brows, there was a talisman with lightning and flames intersecting. Any breath she took had a huge amount of power, stirring up the clouds and mist. "Very good. You can continue to hide today. Don't let me catch you. Even if your uncle's father comes to plead for you, I will still skin you. Lei Dong, do you believe me?" There was still no sound from the surrounding clouds and mist. Shui Lingbo rolled her eyes, deciding to use a soft approach since the hard approach didn't work. "Forget it. I can't be too calculative with a junior like you. As long as you come out and apologize, I will let bygones be bygones. However, if I catch you, it won't be as simple as beating you up. Lei Dong, you have to think carefully. I will give you 15 minutes. After this time, you will have to bear the consequences." Following which she stood there silently. She didn't say anything and waited for a long time. On the left, roughly tens of miles away, a slightly hesitant questioning voice spread out. "Are those words true?" Shui Lingbo's brows rose up, her eyes filled with joy. She spread out her spiritual sense and locked onto where the voice came from. The expression on her face also became gentler. "Of course it is true. It can't be any more true. Then you won't be calculative about me, using you to test my blade? As long as you apologize, naturally I won't be calculative. After all, you are crazy about martial arts. I have seen many martial arts maniacs like you. You won't be bothered when I called you an old lady?" Shui Lingbo's lips twitched as she clenched her fists, giving out cracking sounds. However, she bore with it. The smile on her face was still the same. "I don't care. But I heard that your reputation isn't good and that you never keep your words." There was a hint of hesitation in his rough voice. Shui Lingbo was slightly shocked, revealing a confused expression. "Is that so? I, Shui Lingbo, am a woman of my words. Well, have I ever gone back on my words? Then I will consider it. All right. I also called you an old demon woman. You want to eat me, right? I don't eat people." Shui Lingbo scoffed impatiently. "Are you coming out or not?" Her spiritual sense swept around, but she still couldn't find Lei Dong's true location. That rough male voice also chuckled. "After thinking about it carefully, since you can't find me, why should I come out? You are really interesting. If you use candy to trick kids, you will be invincible. Are you playing with me? Shui Lingbo's brows furrowed, a violent glow flashing in her eyes. Her expression was close to going crazy. To think that you call yourself Maniac Blade. In front of a girl, you have to hide like a rat. What kind of man are you? Hey, a man knows when to yield and when to be soft or hard. Who says that hiding isn't a man? Lei Dong laughed, his tone filled with righteousness. You are just an old lady who hasn't even touched a man, so how would you understand the magnanimity and emotions of men like us? Shui Lingbo was instantly furious. Her hair stood on end, and lightning flashed at the center of her brows. Very good. You won't come out, right? Then I will chase you out today. Even if I have to turn this sea of clouds upside down, I will still catch you, you rat. In the sky above, black clouds slowly gathered. Sets of green runes appeared behind Shui Lingbo's body. Numerous lightning bolts gathered over, totally wrapping around her body. It got bigger and bigger, 10 feet, 30 feet, 70 feet, 100 feet. When Shui Lingbo's eyes started to show threads of green and blue, numerous lightning bolts struck out in all directions. It spread across 100 miles, forcefully striking out without any care for the consequences. In just a dozen breaths, lightning glows flashed all around. The entire cloud ocean was in a mess. Shui Lingbo's face was also becoming younger and younger. Who asked you to call me an old demon woman? Old lady. If you have the balls, do you want to scold me again? If you have the ability, then continue to hide. When I catch you, I will skin you, pull out your tendons, cut you into 8 pieces, and cook you with pork and mutton to feed the dogs. I'm only 29. It is not my fault that I can't find a dual cultivation partner. It is you men who are useless and don't have the ability. The more she said, the more furious she got. The lightning glow around Shui Lingbo's body actually became several times larger, showing no signs of weakening. His face had also become younger, and his entire body was shrinking. Before this, she was 18 years old, but now she was 16 years old. Just as he was rising up in the sea of clouds, a small boat slowly sailed over from a distance. It hung in midair and sailed above the cloud ocean. There was also a graceful figure standing on the bow of the ship. She was holding a red umbrella and looking forward with a lazy expression. After staring for a moment, the woman sighed. Senior Master, this fellow has that spiritual treasure on him. As long as he hides in the cloud ocean, who in the world can find him? Don't think that he is arrogant. He is actually really smart. Why waste time with him here? You have chased him for over 10 days in the cloud ocean, but in the end, did you hurt him at all? Who knows, he might have fled long ago. Even if Martial Uncle really wants to catch this rat, you should return to Martial Uncle's sect and bring the great Yuan heavenly mirror here first. Shui Lingbo was too lazy to bother, lightning flashing her eyes. Balls of lightning exploded all around like she didn't need soul power or spiritual energy. Chapter 116. Shui Lingbo was too lazy to bother, lightning flashing in her eyes. Balls of lightning exploded all around like she didn't need soul power or spiritual energy at all. Zhao Yinran laughed, controlling the boat below her to change direction. Shaking her head, I don't mind, but that junior brother might be kidnapped. He has been delayed for half a month. Who knows, he might have some fortuitous encounters and be targeted by those hidden sections. Although Cloud Saint City isn't far from Lingyun's sect, I heard that there's a grandmaster there. Shui Lingbo's expression changed, her expression uncertain. She wanted to give up, but she was unwilling. A moment later, she scoffed coldly. Her body flashed, and she arrived on the boat that Zhao Yanran was standing on. In the next moment, her eyes were attracted by a stone at the back of the boat. Isn't this the mountain and river knife intent of that rat Lei Dong? What an eyesore. Oh, who did the sword beside it belong to? Formed from dozens of swords, but formed from one sword. Splitting a sword intent into dozens of structures, but not losing its true aura. TSK. They both comprehended the martial path intent of mountains and rivers, but is much stronger than Lei Dong's. As long as one's comprehension isn't bad, one can comprehend some things. Who else can it be? Naturally, it is my junior brother who hasn't entered the sect. I heard that he gave Lei Dong pointers, which was why he carved the stone with a sword. As she said that, she saw that Shui Lingbo's eyes were glowing. Zhao Yanran was slightly shocked, saying expressionlessly, "Senior Master, you don't need to snatch from me, right? Instead of taking a piece of rock like me, why don't you go and get him himself?" The expression in Shui Lingbo's eyes became even more passionate. Her eyes looked at the sword mark, not willing to shift away for even a moment. The more she looked, the more she loved it. She couldn't help but want to reach out and touch it. When Zhao Yanran saw that, it was like her heart was sliced, her face turning green. Her body flashed, blocking in front of the stone. "Senior Master, this is mine. Don't touch it." Shui Lingbo was slightly embarrassed. She rolled her eyes and said, "Yanran, you are my senior sister's disciple. We are family. Why do you have to make such a clear distinction? Why don't you give it to me? I'm willing to give this stone another dragon essence sword. Hasn't your junior sister envied me for a long time?" Zhao Yanran hesitated for a moment. After thinking for a long time, her face showed a difficult expression. "How about 3 years later? Disciples also use it to comprehend sword intent. However, other than the dragon essence sword, I also need 10 purple spirit pills." Shui Lingbo clicked her tongue and no longer had any interest in bargaining. He walked to the bow of the ship in high spirits. Sure enough, it was best to catch that person as soon as possible. As long as she entered Tai Yuan's sect, she could have as many of these stones as she wanted. Not long after Shui Lingbo and Zhao Yanran left, another small boat appeared in the clouds and approached the sea of clouds. However, it didn't dare to get close to the area where the lightning glow spread out. It stopped 10 miles away. A moment later, a person flew out from the heavy lightning snakes and landed on the boat. He looked really haggard. The hair on his body was curled up and burnt. Only a few pieces of cloth were left on his body, barely covering his private parts, revealing his strong and muscular body. What a close shave. I was so close to being pulled out by that old demon witch. I only slightly offended her, and she chased me for 15 days. Hey, as expected from the old demon, which that no one dares to offend. She has just removed her seal and reached the Grandmaster level. She is actually so terrifying. Shaking his head, Lei Dong brandished his 150-foot-long saber and slashed his body from time to time, leaving scars on his body. Suddenly, a ball of lightning appeared. Suddenly, it was an energy glow with a fiery glow. Lei Dong didn't care at all, directly asking the black shirt man, "Oh, right. Old Black, what about my stone?" The black shirt old man smiled helplessly and bowed. "Please forgive me, Master. The stone has been taken by Miss Zhao Yanran of Seven Spirits Sect." "How is that possible?" Lei Dong's brow furrowed, his eyes turning serious. "Old Black, you are also a martial ancestor with 5 meridians of the Earth Chakra level. Even if that Zhao Yanran is the 4th generation first seat of Seven Spirit Sect, she can't lose to him. That lady said that if I didn't give it to her, she would rather destroy it." Lei Dong's expression was enlightened, but the black shirt old man was still extremely ashamed. "I am confident that I can beat her, but I am unable to protect that sword intent stone. Miss Yanran also said that if I lent it to her for 3 years, she would think of a way to draw Taiyuan Fairy away. I am useless. 3 years? She probably won't be able to return it. Forget it. I owe her a favor this time." Lei Dong scoffed, resisting the urge to beat his chest and stomp his feet. He drew a wound on his leg, following which he suddenly jumped up into the air. He headed west. Just as the black shirt old man felt weird, Lei Dong's voice spread out from afar. "I'm going to meet Uncle. I sent a message talisman, so he should be here. This time I am prepared to go all out against that woman. Such a talent like Brother Show, I definitely can't let him fall onto the wrong path. Although I can't do anything to her, there will always be someone in the world who can." The black shirt old man was startled. So this matter wasn't over? Shaking his head, the old man continued to drive the leaf boat forward. In his heart, he was filled with questions. Song Xingdao wasn't a true demon sect. Even old master admired their ideals, so why was young master so anxious? Was it because he felt heartache for the quick sword-intent stone? Or was he really tortured by that Taiyuan fairy this time? Sitting on the cloud-crossing carriage, Zhongsho's right palm was a ball of true qi spinning. Half of it was a water blue color like clouds and mist, but also like pieces of ice. The other half was a deep red color, giving off a fiery glow. At this moment, two completely different air masses were swirling together like a spiral. They repelled one another, but also attracted one another. However, be it the fire element true qi or the mist true qi, there were threads of purple lightning flashing within. Lightning and fire accompanied one another, but most of the lightning in the world was born in the clouds. This was the qi cultivation technique that Zhongsho had merged with the indefinite spiritual emperor art, nine-destruction lightning technique, and heaven-swallowing energy conversion technique. He named the self-created technique the world-shocking spiritual art. The name had nothing to do with the technique itself. Zhongsho only wanted it to sound good and give off an aura. As long as he said the words world-shocking, others would know that this qi cultivation technique was really, really strong. The mist true qi naturally came from the sky fox illusion and merged with the 18 cloud shocking god destroying sword intense. It could transform into thousands of illusions and also condense energy to harm others. With the purple lightning accompanying it, power was really strong. The other half of the fire element, true qi, came from the specialty of his body. 2 days ago, Zhongsho finally recognized that the element of his human race bloodline was fire, a flame that covered the heavens. It still hadn't awakened, but during these 2 days, every time he meditated, he could feel that within his soul ocean there was an undying flame burning. Merging into the world-shocking spiritual art, there was one more qi cultivation technique that he knew in his last life, the extreme, mysterious, limitless flame. At this moment, he had only completed the 6 meridians of the bodily chakra realm, and there were still many flaws. However, the specialty that it showed was already obvious. Zhongsho himself was deep in thought, looking like he was observing the true qi changes in his palm. However, in his head, actually, he was thinking about Xianyuan Iren's matter, sorting out his chaotic thoughts. He wanted to break off the engagement, but with that girl's personality, she definitely wouldn't agree. The only way was for her to give up. However, similar to before, to do that was pretty much impossible. No matter whether or not he had the ability to protect himself, the outcome wouldn't be bad. Even if she knew that his soul power had reached the out-of-body realm, that girl wouldn't easily give up on the marriage. If he forcefully broke off the engagement, it would be tough to say what the outcome would be. That girl would most probably forcefully reject, but there was also a slight chance that she would agree. At the same time, she might see it as a huge humiliation and turn against him. Did she really have to keep her promise and not marry for the rest of her life? It was like he was a heartless person, and he was also a little unwilling for this girl to leave him. He was also unwilling to treat this girl as a passerby. What an inexplicable, complicated, and conflicted feeling. At this moment, the only thing he could place his hopes on was Xianyuan Iren's parents. Maybe he could make Xianyuan Iren change her mind. However, if he removed the title of trash, what if his future father-in-law that he had never met since he was young changed his mind? This Xian mountain city, Lord Xianyuan Tong, was said to have a close relationship with his father, and their loyalty was unparalleled. Even if Zhong Weiron's whereabouts were unknown, there was still some relationship between the two of them. The reputation of breaking off the engagement was a little bad. The final outcome was unforeseeable. Speaking of which, am I feeling too good right now? Should he hide his strength or not? Killing was unavoidable along the way. So how could he hide it? Within his palm, a burning pain spread out. Zhong Shoshin came back to his senses. What a joke. I, Sword Emperor Tanxio, actually know how to think about such a thing. Forget it. Let the heavens decide. When the boat reaches the bridge head, everything will be fine. Who cares so much? If I can't break off the engagement, then I will marry this girl. I won't be at a disadvantage and won't feel disgusted. Anyways, I won't leave any leeway on this path, killing without stopping. In the end, she will find out. His mind slightly relaxed. Zongsho looked closely at the change in the ball of true chi in his palm. That spiral was going out of control, stabbing his palm in pain. Even the aura in his body was faintly aching. As expected, there are still flaws. If I am not careful, I will lose control. There is still much room for improvement. However, it can barely be cultivated. In the future, I will just change it. As for the other mistakes, I will only find out after cultivating it. It was said that 19,000 years ago, the Cloud World was a martial arts desert. Until the Desolate Era, when many experts rose up, those primitive martial arts were slowly perfected. He created many ancient and dazzling secret techniques, which led to the golden age of martial arts in the Cloud Wilderness. I have many martial arts classics to learn from, so I can't lose to the people before me. Zongsho used his hand to pinch, dissipating that ball of true chi. This world-shocking spiritual art also had a strong explosive power, but a weak endurance. This ball of true chi only lasted for roughly 2 hours before the energy in his body showed signs of drying up. However, this was in line with his original intention of creating this technique. That you're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.